Alright, so there we are. We're live now with episode 85 of Gas and Shadows. What? And still haven't banned us. Data, do you want to immediately talk about all the racing stuff that they announced over the last 2 weeks or so? They talked about that on, was it last ISC or was it SCL?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I've been kind of a whole bunch of it. Little bit of stuff that they did show off with first work on. Looking forward to the Ember.
And for those watching and don't know, Data's part of the XDR crew who have been doing really cool stuff with the racing and flying. Not picking audio.
Surprised they didn't come out with a racing ship, just because racing has been kind of a focus.
Well, they have a bunch
for
already.
At least the past like 6 months.
Well, most of the stuff they showed off are things that have been in the works for a while. So I don't think it's something that they could just concept really quick and put it out there.
Plus,
well, they could, but I don't think they would.
And
yeah.
Plus, I know you're gonna have opinions on this because all the racing stuff at the moment is touchy. But they already have a shit ton of racing shit.
Yeah, they do.
Now, an argument can be made whether they're good for racing or not. It's completely
Different
different topic. But that poor M50. That building at light speed. But yeah, the racing stuff looked pretty interesting, and they showed off more work on the PTV racetrack.
That one I am looking forward to. It looks like a lot of fun.
Yep, and they talked about racetracks in the Arena Commander getting some love, new tracks being added, as well as racetracks in the PU that aren't just the PU. Do we know if that's still going to be only at Orison or at every other location?
The PTV track?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I haven't heard anything. I mean, to me, it would make absolute sense to have it at each site, like each major landing zone / city. Just as, because you think about it, like they've got convention halls at each one of them that basically sit there and do nothing except for, the one time of the year that they do an IAEA. So to me, it would make sense to have, a go-kart track in there, and then that, whichever site gets selected to host for the year, that year's show, they shut it down for, a week, but you still have all the other tracks still up and running. It just, to me, that makes sense.
Agreed. I guess we'll find out in 318 because that's when they're coming.
Well, I think we'll see. I think this is still kind of iteration 0, so we'll probably see it only like one.
We'll probably only see it at Orison or something, yeah. But my point being is that 318 will find out if what the deal is with them at all. Speaking of, we have a huge 318 thing regarding Evocati last week, right after we stopped last week. Had a huge patch update that had pretty much everything that's going into 318, or at least everything that would be on the roadmap for 318. Whether this is going to be live build or not, still subject to change. But locations, they have added a Daymar crash site using the MSR and 600i derelicts for bounty / delivery missions. Sand Cave archetype, Stanton racetrack locations, Greycat PT racetrack and Crusader, new rivers on Stanton, in Stanton, dozens of additional rivers and lakes on Microtech and Hurston, restricted areas version 3, players will now be given a text warning, a countdown, and an arrow pointing towards the exit. Caterpillar Crash Site Improvements version 1, Derelict Settlements Reclaimers version 2, and they added parallax interior window shader for buildings around all landing zones. So it's not just Orison. They've got gameplay-wise, it was the security post Korea reactivation, undergone full art redesign polish, so the interior of the station is now more matching the later aesthetic. Criminal missions to steal drugs and kill AI, and lawful missions to clear out criminals. Not really much changing, with the exception of the drug stuff, not much has really changed in Korea regard mission-wise, but Korea itself has gotten undergone a change. Platform Assault on Orison. Additional bounty, assassinate, clear all, and other missions on Orison platforms, reusing the assets from Siege of Orison. Salvage missions regarding hull scraping, hull stripping and repairs by hand, as well as stripping by salvage ships. Break down ships and vehicle exteriors, converting them into recycled material. Vehicle soft death. Instead of instantly exploding, ships will now be put in a powered down state, which allows players to board. Sandbox prison activities, new speed of missions and activities to earn merits to or escape. Filled with an emergent population of prison guards and lootable civilian prisoners. Courier mission updates, in addition to the local courier delivery missions around each Stanton planet system. Quality of life inventory updates. They added a transfer all button to inventories that work based on selected filters. Added visual feedback attempting to quick move an item that won't fit. Implemented toggle to always show hide item ports for equipping gear. Then finally for gameplay we have the law system improvements. Crime Step 1 and 2 will no longer be punishable by death and instead allows players to pay them off with a fine.
Followed by death!
Obviously for ships and vehicles, it's just the Drake Vulture, the light salvage ship. Weapons, it's the multi-tool salvage attachment. Core tech, persistent entity streaming, so making use of services such as entity graph and replication layer. This will allow for every dynamic object in the game to fully persist across all servers. We did an episode on that, on persistence. CIG did an even better explanation of it, so go watch the source material. AI, they have NPC loadout updates, and Core Tech, they updated the Gen 12 renderer, and they updated commodity kiosks to use building blocks tech. We're still using the old Flash. That's pretty much everything from the Ivacati patch notes. And they're still playing around with all this stuff. Still in Ivacati. I'm speculating on a earliest December 24th release if 318 goes live this year.
I'm guessing.
Earliest.
I'm going to predict PTU Wave 1 in about 2 weeks.
For those who don't know, Wave 1 is concierge and subscribers only.
Yeah. I think they probably want to get at least full open access in PTU before they go on their holiday break.
I agree.
I mean, ideally they would want to get as much of the bugs fixed before then also, but just so that they can get bug reports and statistics on things that are working and things that are not over the break, I would expect that they want to try to get it open.
Yeah.
I would be very surprised if it goes live before they go on break.
Same.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say earliest, because honestly, I think when do they come back? It's like mid-January, right?
It's like a week after January.
Yeah. So early mid-January. So it's probably, I'm not even going to say, like, oh, it's going to be when they come back. I think it's probably, realistically, going to be mid to late January. The patch goes. live, if not even February.
I agree with that. But I also think that there's probably some pretty big internal pressure
To
to
get it
show
out.
something. And so if they decide to push it early, it's going to be so broken that people are going to be running away from
It's
it.
going to be like 3.0 again.
But I think a functional version of it, I agree with you, is probably in very late January, possibly mid-February.
I'm going by when they were initially going to do Xenothreat. That was going to be an end of the year patch, and then they pushed it back, and we didn't get it until February of the year.
Well, they've also got a long track record of basically doing nothing, doing something right before Christmas, and then doing nothing for 2 weeks, and then saying, okay, now we're back, but we've got to schedule meetings, and that's going to take 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Then once the meetings are done, then we'll have to sit down and figure out what we're going to tell you. So we're usually, their track record is mid-February before we actually start seeing anything of substance coming out of them.
Yeah.
A long time.
Yeah. I've never been a fan of it. I've always found it frustrating, but they've been pretty consistent.
It is, but they've been consistent about it, so it is at least they're able to plan around it, I guess.
Yeah.
The best way to put it.
That's not to say we won't see some minor hot fix type stuff pushed out, but you won't see anything of real big substance coming out of them until after that mid-February, is my take on it.
Yeah. And then there's also obviously we're getting 3.19. Sorry, after that. They've already confirmed 3.19. Which means that's not going to be until, let's say, Q3 of next year. If that's... Obviously, that's going to depend on when 3.18 goes live.
But do we know what's in 3.19? I mean,
I can double check, but I haven't checked in a
agreed
while.
They've agreed that they're going to put 3.19 out. They haven't, as far as I know, they haven't really said
Checking now.
what
They said
3.19
some
is.
things. They said some things. I remember covering it.
Okay. I don't think
okay, right now
is going to be a very big patch. Is all I'm getting.
Right now the roadmap says nothing, but what they could do, we haven't said what they could do is they might do something where some of the stuff in 3.18 is not going to make it, and then that's what 3.19 ends up being, and that's a way they can have 3.18 make it before the end of the year. It's just and either 3.19 becomes the rest of it, or they just do a 3.18 X patch that has the rest of it, like they've been doing with 3.17.
Well, I mean, 3.19 was always a CYA patch, like from day one. I will give them credit; they've been honest about that. They said we don't want to do it, but if we have to, we'll plug it in. And so, on that level, they've definitely been very open about that, and I have no issue with that myself. If they need it, use it. Like, I personally don't care about the whole numbering system. Like, I would be okay if they came out and said there's going to be a 3.22 patch. Like, I don't care as long as there's steady progression, right?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Like, people can complain about numbers, but at the end of the day, it's not the numbers; it's the content that within the numbers, if you will.
Yeah. To be honest, I've never understood why, like, 4.0 took on this like kind of mythic standard within the community of like 4.0 was going to be this big deal, and to me,
because that was going to be the one with Stanton server meshing. But it's like that could just what if they decide, hey, 3.19 is going to be doing static server meshing and Pyro? It's like,
yeah, exactly. It's just a number, guys.
just a number. The patch, the stuff that's in the patch is what matters. The number is pretty much what is just going to be the thing that you remember about that. Like, oh yeah, that was the patch where everything, 3.15, that was when all the medical stuff came in and all the inventory stuff. 3.0, that's when we had all the plant, like, that's really all the number serves as. It's just a system of organization and to kind of categorize everything. Other than that, it's just a number.
Yep. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That's 319 is probably the way that they get around missing some content in 318, but still being able to say, let's push 318, but it'll be, it won't be as substantive as they were originally expecting it to be, but
Yeah.
just pushing that what doesn't make it into that 319. I agree
Now,
with that.
the roadmap has been updated as of November 23rd, so that is last week. And looking at the roadmap, 318 has all the locations are committed, which doesn't surprise me because the racetrack one they've been working on for a while. The sand caves they've been working on for a while. The rivers they've been working on for a while, and the Daymar crash sites is just essentially, I hate to put it this way because it sounds like I'm demoting what the significance of it, but it is just kind of reusing assets and changing things up. Like, it's using existing tech and assets and repurposing it rather than the river stuff is creating new tech, the sand caves is creating new tech, the racetrack even is kind of like repurposing assets, but also creating new tech to make the racetrack work. So I wouldn't be surprised if all that makes it into the salvaging stuff. I want to say it's kind of 50-50. It could very well make it in.
It sounds like at this point they've
And it does sound like it's going to be
mostly locked down.
But you never know.
True.
Yeah. Like, we don't know what it ties into. Like, on just my 2 cents, I think salvage has the highest risk of being delayed just because we don't know everything that it ties into.
Well, looking at this right now, salvage and the salvage multi-tool, like the gameplay of salvage hull stripping and salvage multi-tool are confirmed, or are committed to 318, which means that they're committed to getting it out in 318. Kind of. Along with the new Orison missions, security post career reactivation, Zenbox prison activity. The things that aren't committed are the time trial race missions, as part of, I think that's the Reader Commander stuff. Time trial races and cargo refactor system are not committed. So, if anything, those are definitely going to be the ones back. The Vulture is also not committed. That. As are persistent entity streaming and Gen 12 scene renderer are not committed. So those things may get pushed back to like a 318X patch. At least going by the roadmap.
Yeah.
So who knows? We could be looking at like, okay, 318 drops, we're missing something. We're missing the Vulture, we're missing persistent entity streaming, you need more time in the oven. We're missing Gen 12 renderer, time in the oven. So there's going to come out and say 318 1 or 2, like, later on in, say, February. That's when we get those things. Cargo system refactor. Honestly, I can see that being pushed to 319. Absolutely.
I want to say, I think they're pretty locked down in there for it. They haven't said much about it, but I think given what.
Oh, that's why I think that. That's why I say that it could be, because they have salvage. They've been talking about for like over a year now, and showing stuff off with it as well. And unlike Pyro, this isn't an entire star system that they're showing off. Just a gameplay.
On the other hand, it wouldn't be the first time they delayed it.
No, but not. Which is why I said it was 50-50. Honestly, with the exception of the locations, I think a lot of this is kind of flip of a coin if it's actually going to make it. Assuming 318 even this December, and not the more likely January, February.
I'm wondering how much we're going. If how do I say this? You remember that we had that issue. I don't remember exactly what patch cycle it was, but it was right before they pulled Delamar out of the game. We were at that point where there's just so many they had so many assets in the game that they
Yeah, the
literally
servers
couldn't
were too
put
much.
anything more in there.
That was
And I'm
312,
wondering
I
if
believe.
okay. Well, what I'm wondering is if we're starting to get back into that again because they still haven't gotten, all the underlying mesh check going. Like, I don't know if it's just PES or if it's PES plus other subcomponents or PES and other systems not interacting yet. Like, they haven't figured all that out, and so we're getting like another situation where they're hesitant to put more things in until they've got that interaction going, because we'd just be back to that overbloated system that's taking the servers down all the time. I don't know, but it's a question in my mind.
No, it's a good one because I think that is going to be the case at some point, which is why server meshing is so important, why we need to get it sooner rather than later, is because we have no idea how long the servers can last as they are right now without ending up at that same point where, okay, we need to start removing massive things. Because I've noticed some small things missing here and there, audio stuff, visual stuff, kind of getting picked out the airlock in order to add some new stuff in. I get it, resource management.
Before you go out and say that those things are being removed to make room, I think you should still leave the possibility that as things get updated, those little bits just don't get updated at that point in time. Because there's been a lot of changes to the audio that I've noticed that I don't think it's because they're purposely removing it. It's just as different like models get updated or some data structures get reorganized, those little bits get left by the wayside, and they just don't
I think
have
it's
the
both.
time.
I think it's both because some of them are clearly they removed this for whatever reason it is. But either way, they're doing resource management by removing small things so that they can add in new, understandable given context of it. Alpha, we're testing the new things to see if it work, but eventually we're going to need to add that stuff back in or add new versions that are better. And we can't do that until we actually have the sufficient space to do that, which server meshing.
Yeah, I can see like the whole thing they're showing us with the cargo exploding. When you take down a ship, it spawns out cargo, and they're saying each cargo piece is now its own actual entity. And with persistence, that makes me wonder, like, okay, so that's that many objects on that server that you just suddenly added to it that are technically persistent. And we don't know how developed persistence is yet on whether or not how optimized the server is to handle that kind of stuff. So that might be a reason why cargo refactor might get delayed a little bit. I don't know.
Well, I believe what they said in that video is that all those cargo containers already have a unique ID. It's already being tracked. They can leverage the fact that they're entities that's already in the game and use that to let them, or a percentage of them, be dropped from the ship when it gets exploded. But from what I understood, they're not adding all of those cargo containers as entities. They already are unique entities.
Oh, okay. I might have misunderstood it. The way I interpreted it was they're saying when the ship explodes, they create those entities, and that's where I was thinking that it might be a problem. But like you're saying, they might already exist, and that might not be an issue. I mean, I'm
I
just
did,
thinking of. Go for it.
Oh, I was just going to change the topic real quick, or go off on a rabbit hole, but you can finish your thought.
No, I'm just thinking of like ways that we might not understand why there would be delays in certain categories. That's all I was getting at. But go on.
Oh, I was just going to say that there are some aspects of PES that are breaking significant parts of the game. One of those big changes is that bed logging is not going to work in 3.18 because I guess they have to do a large amount of rework.
I guess
to
there's some
make it
back-end
function.
issue with how it works now versus how it would work with persistent entity streaming and how that works.
Yeah.
And there's just a compatibility issue from what I've heard.
Yeah, so they said that in 3.18, bed logging won't be a thing.
Which,
It just won't work.
if I'm being honest, I only bed logged once in the last year, and that was relatively recently just to test it out, and it didn't work anyway. So, no, it did work. It didn't work on different shit. But my point being is I tested out more this week with IAE and stuff than I have in the last year. So I don't know how many people really bed log anymore these days because it's been so erratic from patch to patch to begin with.
Well, it has been buggy, but I like to use it a lot.
I'd love to use it, it's not consistent. Problem.
It's it can be dangerous, that's true, and inconsistent at best.
I always found that it worked. It was really, really buggy basically the closer you got to any kind of major like congregation point.
Yeah.
So, if you were near a Lagrange, a rest stop, a planet, a moon, it always had problems. But I found it consistently worked if I went out into basically dead empty space, like got more than 100 kilometers away from any big object, and it worked every single time as long as I did that. And out in the Aaron Belt too.
I'd say if you haven't used it recently, you should give it a try because I've been using it quite often since 3.17.2 hit, and I logged out right next to space stations like Everest. Come back in, and I'm right there. The only little glitch that I've noticed is that sometimes when you spawn in, you aren't necessarily where you were when you logged out in the ship, or like when you get out of the bed, it puts you like inside the ship a little bit, and you have to find an interactable to like put you back in the mesh. So there's still some bugs, but generally I've had pretty good success with it getting back in a server.
I tried it relatively. The recent time I tried it was on a Vanguard. I want to say Ward. It may have been a Harbinger. One of the Vanguards. And it seemed to work. I literally just logged out because, like, okay, I just need to hop server. So I'm logging out, logging into a new server. It seemed to work fine. I did that, I believe, in the dead of space somewhere. I did try it on a Reliant, on one of the rooftop landing pads.
Oh, yeah, that's a mistake.
Yeah. Especially when it's on the one...
Just the ship itself is kind of a mistake, but...
Yeah,
The
unfortunately.
rooftop
not a
landing
good spot,
pads of New Babbage, and it seemed to work fine until it's like, oh, you can't get in the pilot seat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that entirely. I was like, this is just the ship I was flying at the time, so I'm like, oh, let me log out and log into this new server because this server's forked, whatever. Fucked. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if it goes away for a while, I'm okay with that. I just hope that it doesn't get pushed aside kind of long term, because I think, to me, it like you said, a lot of people probably don't use it, but I think the people who do use it, it's kind of like an immersion tool in the sense that being able to utilize it kind of helps you feel like you're in the galaxy, like, you're waking up and you're in this world rather than always, waking up at starting point A, or
It's
whatever.
also a really fun tool to use because, when I log back in, I want to be here. So I'm just going to log out here. Like, I love using it. It doesn't always work, so I don't always use it. That's my personal issue with it. Like, but I don't want it to go away, and I don't want it to get on the back burner to the point where it's 5 burners down on the back burner, massive kitchen.
Yeah.
Or it's like left by the wayside and we don't see it again for another year.
Yeah, there was
To
some
hit on
interesting.
another topic I'm sure we'll get. I don't want it to be like modularity.
Eh. Will they? Won't they? Will they? Won't they?
Well, you see, yes, but really no, but actually yes.
This time for real. Anyways, sorry, go ahead, Data.
Oh, I was just going to say there was some interesting discussions about people were having over bed logging as a feature and what the implications are once PS starts working correctly with servers. And it's interesting to see some and hear some people's ideas of how it should work and how they don't want it to work. Some of the people didn't like the idea that you had to bed log, and they want to be able to just decide to log out anywhere, and it doesn't matter what ship you're in or where you're at. You can just pop out, and then after the whatever combat time spools down, then you'll despawn and you can come back in exactly the same spot. And to some degree, I agree with that, because if you're doing things FPS mode and there is no bed available, the idea that you log out and then when you come back in, you get teleported to your nearest station or whatever, that puts us back to where we're at right now, which I don't like. On the other hand, I like the idea that you need to have a bed to be able to, well, not log out, but what is the function of a bed in a ship if it's not used to log out and save your state? Or is there going to be some buff you get for having a bed? And then if you have a buff, that means that you also have a debuff if you don't have a bed, right? So how do those things work out? And I'm in favor of bed being a logout point. I just don't know how you would handle it for FPS style missions and things like that.
Yep. Well,
Well, what about?
that's
Would you?
one? Sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just gonna throw in. What if they allow something like a backpack with a sleeping bag, or just an added item you can throw in any bag that's your little pup tent or something like that.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot.
There you go. We solved an issue. Hear that, CIG?
It is kind of a tough question though, because you're absolutely right. Like there's pros and cons to it. And the fact that we are playing in an MMO brings certain kind of restrictions, I guess is maybe a way of saying it. Like
Right, like if this was a single player
account.
game, you can just log out wherever you are and then log back in, no problem, because it's like no time has passed, there's no server to worry about or other players to accommodate, it's just you. The entire world stops when you press the pause button.
And locations too, being out in the middle of nowhere, whether you're in a spaceship or you're walking around on a deserted asteroid or moon or planet, same thing. Like, how do you explain that you went to sleep, while walking across a 300,000 kilometer desert and you woke back up, in a town somewhere? Like, that doesn't really work. So it is kind of a unique, interesting problem. You're right about that. And I don't think there's a single right answer.
But there are many wrong answers.
With
yeah.
With PES as well, and with how they've kind of sort of flirted with the idea of it, to some degrees it almost does seem like they're moving toward a idea of it doesn't really matter what you do, where you are, when you log out, you're at you come back in wherever you were at. But if that's the case, because that's how they've kind of been talking about ships as well, and that like, oh well, if you log out, you log back in, your ship's still going to be exactly where you were. Okay, and it's like that's fine if that's what they want to go for. The problem being is for beds and that kind of gameplay, like they've always said and they've always maintained that a ship with a bed is much more valuable than one that's like just a fighter cockpit like a Gladius, because with a bed you're going to go and be able to essentially keep where you're at versus somehow ending up at the last station, civilized point, city, whatever.
Yeah.
So if they're going away from that, then it draws to mind, and if that is what they're going for, which I kind of feel like it is, the big question becomes, well, what do you do with beds? Because you've been harping this whole bed thing for years and years and years, and all of a sudden just go, yeah, nope, out the window. It's like if that's what's going to work best, okay, but you need to go and then do something with that. You can't just go and be like, ha, whoopsie, change your mind. You have to go and do something with it.
See them doing a kind of mini buff debuff thing, in the sense that, yeah, you can essentially log out anywhere, but if you log out in a bed, you wake up, rested, or, you're back. Let's say, a bed, by going to sleep and sleeping in a bed, maybe you get, 2% healed or something like that, little tiny things like that. Whereas if you don't, maybe you wake up and, you slept in your armor, so you've got a minus 0.2%, debuff in your reaction time for the first 2 hours that you wake up or something, to kind of denote like you didn't sleep well, kind of a thing. That might be something that they could do. I don't know, like I don't know all the pros and cons to it, but to me that would be a really easy way of going away from beds meaning something, and allowing people to basically do it anywhere, but still going, well, your ship has this little extra tiny little buff thing. Sorry.
Yeah, from my perspective, I would like them. If they do anything like that, I would like to see a positive buff by sleeping in the bed, but not a negative one.
Yeah, I agree with that. That is the way to do it.
Okay.
Well, that could play into the whole skills thing they were talking about, to where, like, for example, hey, you slept in a bed within the last real 24 hours. That means that all of your skills, as they're developing, your skills develop 25% faster for having slept in a bed. Sure, it's not that huge of a thing, and skills themselves aren't supposed to be that huge of a thing, but little stuff like that, and maybe it's like, oh, on top of that, your food, your dehydration level and your hunger levels go and degrade 25% less. So it's like, oh, you're getting, because again you got this sleep, all these little values, okay, you aren't going to have them detract as much.
Yeah, no, I could see that. And to Data's point, I mean, if you had those bedroll kind of a things, that would be a way of also still ensuring that your ground people still get a proper sleep. But I would kind of like to see something that, if you really don't plan anything out and you're just, yellowing it through the cave system, I would be okay with a minor debuff if you sleep in your armor with no bedroll, nothing. Like, you just literally lay down on the ground, log out, you log back in 8 hours later, they go, hey, you didn't quite get the right kind of sleep. Maybe it's really minor, but it's just that you're just not as good as had you planned with that bedroll kind of a thing.
And similarly to how what we were saying there, maybe also too, maybe it's that, so you get a good night's sleep, so you sleep in an actual bed, then you get these slight debuffs to degradation and a slight buff to your skill buildup, but you go too long without sleep. So let's say, for example, you flew out to a cave and you're down there mining or doing whatever, And when you had gotten there, when you started your play session, before you got there, you had gotten a good night's sleep. Cool, great. You're going through, you're doing great. Okay, you're in the cave system. You log out. You log in the next day. So without like going back to your ship or anything, you're just in the cave. No supplies, no nothing. You log in the next day. No buffs, no debuffs. You go another day, so now you're essentially, your character has gone 2 days without a good night's sleep. Now you're going and getting your hunger and thirst is increasing 25% faster. Your skills increase 25% less. So in other words, you have a optimal, normal, to where you don't get any buffs or debuffs, and then you have buff or debuff on either side of that. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
getting
I
too
can see that.
complicated, but
I think it doesn't.
Go for it.
I don't think it matters what they do. There's going to be somebody who's upset or not happy.
Oh
with
yeah,
it.
but we're just talking about what we want them to
Very-
do. Screw other people.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're never gonna be able to please everyone. That's like rule number one of just doing any type of art, anything. You're never gonna be able to please everyone. Don't bother trying.
Yeah.
Don't
there's
bother
some
trying to
people,
please everyone. I mean, not don't bother trying.
Yeah.
It's like so. There's always gonna be that one guy, not pissed, who's not happy with it and pissed or whatever, even if something stupid and that everyone else literally agrees with. Doesn't matter.
Singling me out, Mando.
Only because of that one time. So
Like, there's a lot of people that I know that don't like having to do like eating and drinking. They don't like any of that. They don't want any kind of upkeep at all.
I remember you and I when we first did it, because we were playing together when we first experienced that status effect system for the first time, and we were talking about how when it first was announced, like we were both, because I know I was never like, oh, this is gonna be bad. I don't want it to be like a survival mechanic thing where it's
you don't want to die because you didn't drink enough.
well, not even just that. It's you didn't drink every 20 seconds, so therefore, which at first it wasn't.
Yeah.
Now it is, but the reason for that is because, and they said this, that they increased the amount of time that you need to eat and drink over the last few patches because they need to get that data. I still don't like it because, like, okay, I get it, you need the data, but please just put it back to what it was. Because I think you should be able to go, like, say you're playing for 4 hours straight. Just, this is a theoretical. You're playing 4 hours straight. You should not need to eat in that 4 hours, assuming you started with a full stomach. Maybe drink once. Like, you shouldn't have to go that. You shouldn't have to be drinking like every 20 seconds and eating every 20 minutes. Like, that's a little absurd. That's where you're getting to that survival mechanic, grindy annoyingness territory.
Well,
It'd actually be
sorry.
okay with them. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. I'll go after.
Just to kind of tie into what both Data and Mando are saying, I personally think, number one, not wanting to deal with it at all, I think that's kind of BS. That's you want to play an arcade shooter then, and this game
or
isn't
an arcade
for you.
flyer.
I think that personally, I agree with what Mando's saying in that the time limit shouldn't be so short that that you're constantly having to deal with it. But by the same token, I do think it should kind of be like ammunition, which is the more active you are, the more constant movement, running around, not like sitting in your pilot seat, but like activity, physical activity should increase your consumption rates. But again, it shouldn't get to the point where it's crazy. You're having to you go do a quick 5-minute firefight. Now you got to eat kind of thing. But I think you should see a noticeable drop in your energy intake and your fluid level. So, and I look at that as just like having to manage your ammunition. You go into a firefight, you get done. You don't go, I shouldn't have to worry about ammo. That's That's BS.
Yeah.
And I think that the food and the water should be kind of treated the same way.
Or
But,
similarly.
like Mando said,
Similarly, right now it is treated the same way.
right. Well, that's what I'm getting at. But the time, the time, like, to me, you should not be able to notice a drop in any of those stats within like a 5 to 10 minute window. In a sense, like if you've got a little percentage meter going, you shouldn't see it drop, because if you do, then you start watching that thing constantly, and now
Yeah.
you're not playing the game. You're watching a bar graph go down, and you're worried about where's my next water source at. That's not that's not conducive to playing a good game.
I think.
But over an 8-hour period, yeah, I think you should have to eat or drink at least once.
Yeah. Like, and that's the thing. Like, even if you're doing all that activity, right? You're running around, you're gunning, you're shooting, nine tails, whatever it is. Like, you should not have to, really, you should not have to go an hour like, you should be able minimum an hour between having to eat, even doing all that activity.
Oh yeah, no, I'm saying like 4 hours.
Yeah,
like
I agree with the longer
if your
time.
Normal food cycle is 8 hours, and you go do run across do a whole bunch of physical activity, then maybe it drops to you need to do something within 4 hours. But still, it's a big window. It's not stopping you from doing anything else before you do that, but it is having an impact. Is all I'm getting.
No, you're absolutely right. You don't want it to be a point where it's detracting from the rest of the game.
Well,
Yeah.
and that comes into to it depends how like all of this stuff of even how often you have to eat or drink. That only really comes into play and matters based on what the effects are of not eating and drinking on your character. I mean, for example, if the only debuffs or only drawbacks to being severely dehydrated or severely starved is that my skills will only increase 75% when they would have increased 100% based on whatever I'm doing, no one's going to care about the mechanic. Everyone's going to ignore it. But if you will die if you don't go and eat or drink often enough, everyone's going to go and focus on that, no matter how annoying or non-annoying it is to keep yourself up. They're going to keep doing it because I want my character to live. They'll be really pissed doing it, but it's that balance that really goes and determines, on top of how often, what are the drawbacks? What are the buffs and debuffs here?
So if we're going by how it is right now, you do go into an incapacitated state if you're dehydrated or if
you will collapse.
Eat. And I think I'm fine with that, but just you need to make the timer. Personally, I think it's just a matter of balancing out the timer with how long how long you can go without eating or drinking. Right now, it's essentially like every 20 seconds. At least feels that way. And then you add on to the fact
that if you go through like a half hour of gameplay, you have to go and start drinking at least.
Yeah, I would say at least half hour. It should not be less than that.
Yeah,
and that's for
now,
drinking specifically.
Opinion,
Food should be longer.
Yeah.
And then,
in my opinion,
yeah, sorry, go. You go first.
With the balancing of like what are the detriments, what are the advantages of being satiated for hunger and thirst versus being severely declining in health and thirst. I would like it down the line when this will be more feasible if, hey, your character is severely dehydrated and or severely starving or both, that you essentially collapse and can only like crawl everywhere. So you don't go into a passed out down state. You're still, for very definitions of the word, ambulatory, but you're obviously not, that way it's not just, nope, sorry, you collapsed and that's it. It's, no, I can still move, and if you can crawl to a seat, you would be able to control a craft, but you're obviously, your vision's probably going in and out and shit. So you aren't dead, you aren't unconscious, but it's not really much better.
Yeah, you don't.
But enough
you
that
don't
it doesn't
go from
take you out of the game.
standing up to face planted on the ground, incapacitated.
Yeah, Well, and my issue is just like right now, when you go all the way to dehydrated fully or starved fully, you're out of the game. You're sitting there looking at the screen going, hey, I hope someone picks me up.
It's the same as if
And
you get
then-
downed and bled to death, or you walked off the 400i staircase the wrong way. It's
What's worse, if I get downed in combat and I'm just sitting there going, hey, I really hope someone goes and picks me up. If a person does and they go, oh, I've got a Hemazole med pen, boop, okay, you're up. And again, balances might come, this might change, but a med pen, a med gun, they can go and get you up that way. If you collapse due to hunger or thirst, someone can get you up with a med gun. I don't know if a med pen will work for this too, but with a med gun, at least that'll get you up. But then immediately you get it's like a 2-minute timer
2 minutes
until
so
you collapse again.
Yeah.
Until you go and eat. And it's just like, so I would almost say that getting to that point, although it is harder, is a lot more punishing than just being down from combat.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why, like, I want it to be to where you're ambulatory, you can move, crawl, you can still pilot a craft to get yourself out of there, even though you're going to be essentially in a similar drunken state to where you're kind of woozy and going all over the place, but you're still able to move and you're still in the game. You aren't just sitting there looking at a screen going, hey, I hope someone else comes and gets me out of this.
I can agree with that.
Because this actually happened I was playing with Apollo on Tuesday last week, and he got dehydrated during after we finished up a drug bunker mission. I was telling Cam about it, how we did the drug bust. I killed all the boxes. He was going to run up to the ship to get water, and when I came up the elevator, I saw him passed out 753 meters away from the ship in the sand. And my first instinct was just to revive him, and full health, and then 2 minutes later he's back down. So I just picked him up the grav gun, dragged him to the ship, and then flew him to station only for him to then go idle and his body despawned and everything like that. But as he's saying, like, I have to get him to a station, and then I have to drag him to one of the beds, the med beds, or drag him to the gurney in the elevator, the hangar, depending on where you are. I don't know if you guys tried doing that to a player recently. I tried moving. I did a rescue beacon. I had to put someone on my Carrick's med bay to heal them. The body does not want to go onto that bed.
Oh, no. All the beds are a huge pain in the ass to really use.
Yeah, there's that. Shall we talk about the RSI Galaxy? Are you guys excited for the Galaxy?
Sure.
Just another large ship for RSI to have in its backlog. That's all I keep hearing about it, is everyone's so pissed. Like, oh, where's my Apollo? Where's my Polaris? Where's my Perseus?
Hey,
I will
things can
say
get done in
this.
concert.
So overall, I think it looks like a nice ship, but I just don't trust CIG anymore when it comes to modularity. And on top of that, it doesn't make developmental sense for them to do modules now anyways, because you look at what's gonna, like, if you build a ship and you build the modules for it now, we're still looking at years before we've gotten everything worked out exactly with all the components and the conduits and the size pieces and all that kind of stuff. That if you did the modules now, that would mean that you need to go back and do all the different modules for all the different ships a second time. I'm not saying you do them all at once, but as you're bringing each ship up, then you have to do each one of the modules for said ship that you're working on. Or you build a bunch of ships, don't do anything with the modules, and then wait until you go through and do all the resizing of those ships. and then you figure out what
It's
size
easier
module.
to add and subtract to something that already exists rather than you have to make it with the intent of it's going to be modular, and then you realize, oh, this isn't really as modular as we thought it was. And
Yeah.
I hear
So I don't think, number one, I don't trust CIG just based on their past track record with modules, and then number two, it just doesn't make sense that the modules are going to be a priority right now. So I think even if they do push out the Galaxy and it's an awesome, great ship, I don't think you're going to see the full modularity for a very, very long time. So that's just kind of my take on it. I know the community is talking a lot about it, and I'm hearing a lot of the content creators are kind of saying what you're saying, which is, where is my Polaris? Where's the backlog? Let's take care of that stuff. And I do hear what Dad is saying, but at the same time, you also listen to what John Carew has said about how long it's going to take to actually do ships. Like he said, if they were to stop everything they were doing and focus purely on the Polaris, that would take approximately 18 months to complete. So I mean, there are some big ships out there that are going to take a long time.
Yep.
And them coming out with another, air quotes, modular, larger, not saying as big as a Polaris, but larger ship, I kind of do gotta agree with some of the content creators out there and saying, is this really the best decision at this time?
Because
That's
it
just my
does,
take.
you can make the argument like, okay, valid, it's going to take too long, whatever, but at the same time, it's like, so you're going to add another ship because it's going to take too long, so you rather get like a quick ship out rather than take the time to make the other one. Like, there's too many ways you can look at. You can look at this as like, oh no, they should work on the other ships and blah blah blah. Versus, no, it's good that we're getting this ship. Like, there's honestly, at the end of the day, it's any side. All sides of this are questionable, I think. Like
I will say, I'm all for ships. Like,
yeah,
bringing in new ships is okay.
and the whole point of it's supposed to be multi-role. That's the whole like modularity thing. Here the multi-role ships are designed to be versatile and variety of diverse with group of friends. The whole thing's supposed to be geared towards group play. The RSI Galaxy is a multi-role vessel with true modularity, including different swappable sections, which just kind of reminds me of the Retaliator and the Vanguard. The RSI interior,
and the Caterpillar and the Avenger,
right?
Stalker.
The RSI Galaxy interior design focuses on classic sci-fi design. Habitation space includes shared spaces and individual bedrooms and captain's quarters. Includes a rear-loading hangar for small ships, which I think they showed a Pisces off in the art.
So, yeah.
Will release with 3 modules available, which are the cargo module for vastly increased cargo space, refinery module that specifically allows for loading saddlebag containers from ships like the Prospector and the Mole, and a medical module that can be accessed with either a lift or the hangar connector. Comlink will be released on Saturday for RSI Day IAE, which was this past Saturday, so already thinking about it. They also talked about the rescue Pisces, the medical Pisces.
Yes.
Which obviously we have in game. I've messed with it a shit ton already.
Oh yeah. It's something that many of us have wanted for a while, although still holding out for a Terrapin.
Yeah, medical Terrapin next. I still want the Terrapin. Like, that's a ship that should be modular. Like, swap out the radar disc and everything.
Not to divert off the medical Pisces topic here real quick, but with the Terrapin, I feel like they're stuck in that they don't want to go and decrease the price because they never have before. But at a $200 entry point for it, that means any variants would be more expensive. Which if you do have a medical Terrapin, that's going to be over 200, which already puts it over the price point of the Cutlass Red, which has 2 medical beds. So I think,
Yep,
at
and
least from that standpoint, they're kind of just
Back
going,
themselves into a corner.
a little bit.
yeah. The only
problem-
way that I can see them getting themselves out of that corner would be for them to go and essentially pull a retaliator on it and to say, oh hey, the version, the ship everyone had bought so far is the Terrapin Scout, which has this advanced sensor suite and better armor, yada yada yada, whatever goodies they want to give that. Declare there being a Terrapin base, which would start in at like 100, 120, and then build variants off of there, or even better if you make it actual modules, because I mean, realistically, you could, depending on how you go and you do a little bit of redesign, you could make it so like the entire back portion of the Terrapin gets lifted out on like a crane kind of thing,
Yeah.
and that's your module. That's that back section there.
Or
And
maybe
then you just
lifted
swap
like
in.
yeah, like it gets
Yeah.
lifted out from underneath or from above or whatever.
Yeah, whatever. But it's like you could usually go, because of the size of it, you could easily just make it to where it just lifts out one way or another. And
Yeah, I mean they
boom,
did it with
there
the
you go.
Vanguard. The Vanguard's a bigger ship. Really, the
and
Vanguard
that's-
it
and
comes
that's
from
supposed to
the
go
bottom.
out through like the bottom of it, I
Yeah.
think.
Vanguard, you
but
can see it at the
that-
bottom.
Yeah,
It's the-
and that would let them go and keep everything as it is, but throw in new variants of it, as well as drop the entry price point for a Terrapin without screwing over the people who originally bought it. And then, plus, if it is a module, you go and simply say, oh, hey, here's the other modules, and if you already own a Terrapin, you get $5 off, or whatever, each mod of it is $20, and original Terrapin owners get it for 15 or 10 for each module. Boom, there you go. You're making them happy.
Yep.
I
But who
still want to
knows?
rant.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the fact that they put themselves in that point in the beginning is still, but not to delve way too off the medical Pisces here.
Medical Pisces definitely nice. Got only one tier 1 bed. The interior definitely got a bit of a rework there to like, because I remember when we were talking about it, it was just gonna be, we thought it was just gonna be a bed in the
just
regular
the cargo
Pisces
section.
and maybe some stuff on the other side. It's like, no, this is a full on, like, it looks like a medical suite. Like, it looks like you stepped inside of the medical suite of some outpost rather than inside of a ship.
Well, and one thing I really like about it too is that it has the little medical cabinet, which comes default pre-stocked with, hey, here's some med pens, hey, here's some food and water. I really
Some
like
flares,
that,
too.
because that's getting you prepared for that role that you're going to be assuming.
Yeah,
Hope
I
that
thought.
more-
Yeah. Sorry, go.
I was just saying, I hope more ships go and do that, to
And I
where
hope
they
older
go
ships-
and have like, oh hey, and I do think like the Vulture, if I remember right, is supposed to come with a multi-tool, so that kind of helps you go and get into that salvage role.
I hope some of the
don't
older
remember them
ships
saying
get that too. What was that?
I don't remember them saying that, but if they do it, I mean, that's cool.
I do hope that some of the older ships also get those cabinets that open, because a lot of people now, like, I've run to people like, oh, can I open these cabinets? Like, no, it's only on the Pisces and Redeemer. Because some people only got into the game like in the last year or so, and they're like, got the Redeemer, they got the new Pisces, and every ship has one of those types of cabinets, but they're not interactable. Watch this. The Constellation Phoenix has a lot of those cabinets too. Yeah, it's definitely a cool little ship. It's a lot faster than the regular Pisces. It's got the little siren lights. Has technically doesn't really have sirens because there's no sound. That'll be fun though if they put that in. If they put that in. But yeah, it's fun little.
It has sounds, but it only transmits over radio waves.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we can't hear. It's a fun, fast little ambulance, like an actual ambulance, and not the Drake Cutlass Black. I mean, Cutlass Red. Or it's like, here's a Cutlass, but with med beds in it.
Shiny.
We turned the turret into a crapper.
We promised that we washed it out of blood from the last guy who had it.
So I know I ranted about the Galaxy, but I am curious what your guys' take was on it.
I think it looks cool. I like the idea of having more multi-role ships and more modular ships, but I do, as I said, it's kind of like any point you come at it, whether they should have been, it's a trivial ship and they should have been working on this, or it's just there's no wrong or right answer in regards to how to feel for it. Like, you can be right to say that they shouldn't have made this ship or worked on this ship. They should be working on the other ships. You can be right to say that they should make this ship. Like, there's no right or wrong answer.
I think that people who are of the opinion that they shouldn't work on anything except for the thing that they want worked on are kind of being simple-minded in a way. I mean, granted, there are some promises the CIG made to the original backers' ships. Content maybe that you really want to see those things finally get added into the game, right? But on the other end of the what's the word I'm looking for? Of the scale is them realizing that putting effort into making a ship that doesn't have content to go along with it is basically wasted effort, because you'll get the ship, but you won't be able to do anything with it.
True.
Some people don't like that argument, but it's true. There's no way to get around that.
I mean, look, the Reclaimer is literally the biggest example of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's there, but you can't really do anything with it. So
Been
what
there
purpose
since
does it really have?
I want to say it's been there since 3.1 or 3.2. We're talking back in 2018. And it's only now getting its function.
Along with that, I don't think that the Galaxy has had that much work. Right? It's obviously not finished on the outside. I don't think it has any interior. So probably most of the work that's been done is just concept work. And concept artists their only job basically is to concept things. This is where things could be they're drawing images and trying to figure out what can work, not what will work. It's concept. That's what it means. These are things that we would like to try. This is where we think pieces need to go. This is what the overall look is going to be, but none of that's production value. So it's not like you have engineers and artists actively. Well, we don't know, because CIG is saying that they're actively working on it. But
there's a rough gray box-ish model already they've shown off. But
right, but it
definitely feels more like a proof of concept model.
That's all it is.
And yeah,
it's a concept ship that looks more built than most of the other concepts that we've seen. But I don't think that means that it's had a whole bunch more effort put into it than other concepts.
No, and by the way, when I was saying that there's no right or wrong answers, that was just my polite way of saying I don't care. But yeah, the whole thing with you're right. Like, the whole people want everyone wants I want my ship to be developed. As I said, I don't. There's no right or wrong answer. I don't care. You can think what you want. At the end of the day, as a ship, I think it's a cool ship. Should it take priority ever? I don't care. Because you guys know this. I care more about the gameplay stuff rather than the ships. Like, ships are great, but we already have a big roster of ships that do a lot. We need more gameplay around them, and we need more stability and improvements. The game itself needs to be out. So, at the end of the day, as you said, you can't just look at the single ship. You got to look at the bigger picture.
I would say, as far as modular ships go, I think there's a lot of things people haven't really considered yet, and that is once we get full persistence, things are where we leave them. You're not just going to be able to pull up to any station and say, well, I'm going to swap out to my other module. That's only going to work if the other module is at that station. There's a lot of logistics that are going to be involved.
That's going to be true with everything.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it was maybe a little bit disingenuous. It is technically true what the dev was talking about, that maybe one day you want to do some medical gameplay and the other day you want to do some refining gameplay. That's cool. Yeah, that could work if you're just going to stay in one system around one space station, or maybe that's your home base. But unless they add the ability to either hire other players to move things for you, or instead of doing the insurance, which I think is probably going to go away the way we use it now eventually, being able to hire NPCs to move things around for you, you're not going to be able to be in Pyro one day with one module doing gameplay and then jump to Crusader and then swap out there unless you already have that module at that station. And that's going to be true for every ship. It's going to be true for every type of thing you can equip on your ship. So honestly, I would rather have a more specific unified vehicle that's not modular, unless it's like a Caterpillar, because those modules you probably be able to rent, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, maybe you could rent modules in other stations.
It's a
too.
Caterpillar,
Really
so it's a Drake ship, which immediately makes everything more cheaper and easy. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to say that in like a joking, oh, it's Drake. Like, that's the whole point of Drake. They're cheaper and easier to maintain. They're probably more accessible. That's their whole shtick, and that's why everyone uses them, or at least why most criminals use them.
Yeah, but my point was that aside from all the other things that people are complaining about with modular ships, I think this is one that isn't getting any thought, really. The fact that it's modular, which means there's going to be pieces that you're going to have available at a specific place when you want to swap them out. It's not just you're going to click a button and then you're ready to go to do the next thing.
If it's not your home port, you may actually need to rent the space, which may be another drain. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That is a whole aspect that people aren't thinking about. But it totally makes sense that CIG would go that route of, hey, you don't just pull up and insta-click to switch your profession, in your ship, and then, 5 minutes later, you're hauling ass out of there. I think it's going to take some time. I think it's going to cost some money, and I think it's going to require some planning on your, so some logistics storage planning on your part if you own that piece. I agree, and I think that is going to apply to all your ship components.
My hope is you're pulling into, like, say, Cousin Crows on Orison. You're like, okay, I'm here to swap out the freaking Retaliator bombers for the cargo thing. We're doing a big op. You're there, right? You pull it in, they start working. You're there for like maybe, say, just whatever amount of time. Off the top of my head, 4 hours, right? So you're like, okay, I got 4 hours to kill. I'm gonna hang around, Orison, do some stuff, do some missions around the city, because hopefully at that point they'll have local missions and everything. It's like, because the reason why that's my hope is because it gives you that immersion. Like, okay, this isn't just an instant, like, you click to change the thing. This isn't adding a underbarrel attachment to your rifle. This is, you're completely retrofitting your ship for a different purpose than what it was when you came into the shop.
Yeah,
that's not
I agree with that timeline. Although I would actually increase that to like.
I wanted to say a day, but I'm like, just say 4 hours. This first number came to my head. It's like, that right. somewhere around there, where it's like it's going to be essentially an overnight deal. You're going to be there for. Yeah.
But I'd also like to see like the location come into play. So in other words, if you go to a really busy place, they might, unless you've actually like created an appointment for it, if you just drop by, I'd like, depending on how busy the area is, I'd like them to be like, yeah, dude, no, we're booked up for this next week. Like, come back in a week, because you didn't plan ahead and call us in advance, kind of a thing.
Or
I'd
they'll
be
just add you to a
perfectly
queue.
okay with that, depending on like location size, right?
Yeah. I mean, something
One
like
thing
Orison
too-
probably have the space, but smaller places wouldn't. Right.
Thing too that, and this is a bit of an issue, is as you guys noted, with a ship that's modular, you still need to have the module. Otherwise, if I have a Caterpillar and all it has is the cargo module, all I have is a cargo ship. It doesn't matter that it's module. That's what I've got. And the way CIG seem to be talking about it, they seem to be talking about like, oh yeah, you go anywhere and the ship magically transforms. Now, as you guys noted though, maybe you'll have the option, maybe Caterpillar modules or Carrack modules will be at least semi-common enough to go and be able to rent them out. Any large, whatever the main space station is of that system is going to have at least a couple of them to go and rent out to people. And then you would be able to, when you're done with it, even if you're not done with it at that station, I get a Caterpillar cargo module, I give them X amount of money, and then I go and I turn that in later on. I'm like, oh, I want to have the vehicle hauling module on there now. And so I go and I turn in the rented cargo module that I had. That'll get, through game logic, get shuffled back over to the station. Maybe. But the way CIG was talking about it, and the way at least this is supposed to work based on the systems that we know of, these two things don't add up. Something's out of whack here. There's some information we don't have here on how this is going to work.
Well, I think it's really easy. They were trying to sell a ship, so they made it sound as great
Entirely
as possible to sell the ship. I think the realities are a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, that it's not going to be easy, that it's going to take time, it's going to take planning, and I don't think that's something that they want to say out loud, because it's not going to help their ship sales right now. But in the long term,
entirely possible.
I mean, come on, we're talking marketing, right? They've always been trustworthy and honest.
Damn marketing team. We're like that super villain, like at the end of the day, curse you, marketing.
And I mean, now alternatively, and again, I don't know that they would go with this. I haven't heard any indication of this, but most modules, at least that we've seen so far, there might be exceptions to this, but theoretically, they might make it to where, like, let's say a Caterpillar, and so we know we've got the cargo module for it. Let's say that we've also got a vehicle hauling module that's dedicated for hauling around. Let's say you could fit a single Nova tank in one module, or like several Cyclones and like an over-under storage, stuff like that. Okay, if I go and I want to have, and we'll say for simplicity's sake, that any kind of a cargo module is the base version. It's essentially just an empty room, and it's able to hold cargo. That's it. There's no special equipment associated with it. So then if I want to swap in that vehicle hauling module, maybe somewhere on the ship that's a dedicated little spot somewhere, or potentially packing it into SCU crates, maybe I can dismantle that vehicle storage mount and just haul it in the ship. And then I can just go and pull that out of the crate later on and have the dock hands assemble that for me. Hey, now I've got that. that obviously wouldn't work for everything, because you have some modules that are, I mean, like, look at the Endeavor. That isn't going to really work for that. But for some ships, that might work, that you can go and pack up these modules into. I mean, maybe for the Endeavor, it would just be the huge, like, raft type cargo crates, something like that. Either way, that might be one possibility that would let you maintain that versatility, but you're giving up some cargo space to do it. Maybe.
Yeah, anything's possible. But I think one of the bigger things, and we kind of talked about it, I think, last session, just the ship production in general. I would really like to see them get to a system where for every new concept ship that they bring out, they put one of the older ships that is just kind of hanging out doing nothing into either production, or if, such as, I know it's on the list now, the Crucible, or you take one of those old ships and you put it into the gold standard edition update pipeline. That way you at least have some parity going, where, hey, I think it would kind of help the community, because you wouldn't have part of the community going, hey, what's going on with the old ships, and yet you're still bringing out a new concept ship each time, but at the same time you got a parallel of an older ship getting updated. And I just think that would solve a lot of problems if they would do that. But to me, it doesn't make sense why they don't. Like, I don't know what's going on internal, but it just seems like such a simplistic no-brainer. I'm wondering why they're not doing it already. Like, what's stopping them from doing that? Because obviously they could have thought of that, and for some reason somebody said no. And I'm just curious what that no reason is.
Well, right now, I would say the answer is probably because all the ships we're seeing right now are ships that they need for Squadron 42.
You don't think those are already done?
No, I don't. I think a lot of them are probably. I mean, I think the ones we're seeing right now, the ones that are coming to that we're getting immediately, are probably ships that are now or will be required for Squadron 42. I think that's probably what the pipeline is full of.
I can't wait until Squadron is, at least Squadron version 1 is out, and we can finally get some focus on the PU. Like, I know for things like server meshing and that kind of stuff, yes, we are getting some focus there, but just for too long, it's felt like for those of us who are primarily here for the PU, for Star Citizen and not Squadron 42, it's felt like we're being shackled to Squadron 42, and it's just, oh, too bad. Sorry, that's how it's going to be. Just be nice.
I mean, it is how it's going to be. That's they really are trying to get Squadron out the door, and I'm okay with that.
Perpetually
I think they really
in 2
needed
years
to
from
get it
now.
out the door.
And
it takes
I agree
time.
that they need to. I think it's kind of a combination of, I think CIG is starting to realize that ship sales can't be the answer to bringing money in forever. Like, that's just not going to work. But you could get Squadron 42 to become your moneymaker, and then you don't need to worry about ships bringing in your money.
We've kind of theorized on that in the past, like, and how they can go about it, because right now they don't have any, like, an actual product. Yeah, they have merch and stuff, but that's not really an actual product that they make and sell for revenue in the same way that something like Squadron 42 or Star Citizen would. And I think the game is going to, unintended, the game is going to change on how the monetization system on the website works once Squadron is out to some degree. But they do definitely need to get that out. And I think last I said, CitizenCon is 2 years out, but it's always 2 years out. So
Yeah.
But
But
I'm
even
excited for both, so it should be interesting to see what comes of it in at all. Yep. Calcine, you still there?
Yeah. Present.
I know people, the whole they're gonna start working on EU. I think because no, then they're gonna start working on the next Squadron thing. Not the full game that's coming out, allegedly, right? It's
Just chapter 1, and
Chapter
there's
1.
supposedly 3 chapters.
right. So they're probably just gonna work on the next chapter. Although they have been working on multiple chapters at a time, so it's not like they've only worked on chapter 1. Now that they work on chapter 2, like they already have a lot of stuff done for the various chapters, but having a lot of stuff done versus all of it done are two very different things, and we don't know how much of it is done for each one.
Well, I hate to say it, because it how do I say this? Once they do chapter 1, it's a single player game. I mean, yeah, you might be able to have your friends join you in the game, but essentially it's a linear, non-PU, non-MMO game, which essentially means that they will have the mechanics and a large portion of assets to draw from, that they essentially become kind of like any other game studio, where it's, oh, we need to push out Halo 2. Okay, well, we already did Halo 1, so let's just let's reskin some previous assets, and and do some some
Bad example in this
a
instance,
few
but
more
yes,
of the
yeah, essentially.
What you call it, when people wear the bodysuits and get the motion cam stuff,
Motion capture.
get a few different animations in there, but essentially, it's all the really hard work has already been completed. So to me, chapters 2 and 3 should be a lot easier for them to produce.
From what I understand, I'm pretty sure they already have most of the. I want to say like most of the important motion capture for the other, because.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, like all the stuff regarding the actors that are on, I'm pretty sure that's all done for all of it. I imagine so, at least. Could be wrong, but
yeah, no, I'm just saying, like, oh, hey, we're gonna have a new character, so we need to get his mocap in. But the other, the other 90% of the mocap has already been done. The other, 90% of the assets that they're going to use are done. Like, they only need to introduce the couple new items to get it up and running.
Right.
That's what I'm getting.
And honestly, I don't even, like, at least me personally, I don't see it more as like, oh, chapter 2 and 3 are sequels, more so an extension of, like, part of a whole, essentially. So, but still, like, you're absolutely right in that, essentially. Because keep in mind, the stuff with Squadron and Star Citizen both is, they just need to actually make all the tools, then once they make all the tools, they can make the rest of the game. But once they have the game, it should go, or once they have the tools to make the game and all the systems, development for both should go a lot faster. I mean, that was kind of the whole issue with making planets originally. Now they can make planets a lot faster. So it's their main hurdle isn't so much we need to make a game, now we need to make another game. It's we need the stuff to make a game, and then we need to make the stuff that we just made work, and all the systems work with each other and all that stuff. So it's kind of a complex but also simple problem.
Yeah, I think we're stuck with Squadron 42 in the sense that it's going to be a priority until it's out, just because it is going to be the moneymaker.
Yeah.
But that being said, I do wish that they would at least, I don't know, address the perception that it's the priority only, and that the PU is a secondary backseat to it. I'm not saying that's not the case, but I mean, think about it. Like, okay, so you got a community that's here for the PU, but you're telling them they're not a priority. Why not at least give them some lip service and say, hey, no, we really do, you know, we're really focused on both instead of saying what they are saying, which is we're focused on Squadron 42 only. To me, that
But
just doesn't make
'cause
sense.
I think they're being honest. They
They-
are
I
focused on
agree,
Squadron
they are
42.
being
They've said
honest.
repeatedly that, you know, as things get done in Squadron, they will filter over to the PU, but right now Squadron is the priority. So I see it as them just telling it the way it is.
I agree with
Okay.
Data on that. The thing is, though, that they do. I think that
Oh, I'm
The
not saying
problem-
they're not saying that. I guess what I'm getting at is that the way that they're saying it, I think, turns off some of the community.
no, I think
That's more what I'm getting at.
I don't think it's the way they're saying it. I just think it's the perception rather than
The perception.
yeah. It's the perception because a lot of people like what do you hear about when you hear about CIG? You're hearing about Star Citizen. Everyone talks about Star Citizen. No one really talks about Squadron 42. A lot of people, many Star Citizen backers even, don't even know what Squadron 42 is or that it exists. And that's a
Yeah.
perception issue in that CIG doesn't talk about it a lot. And when they do talk about it, they talk about this, it's their priority and all that. But they don't really talk about it a lot, and maybe they should talk about it more. And that's a PR issue. That's a perception issue. Not they need to say like both are equal because they're not. Squadron is their priority. To them it's more important. They want to get that out the door. And as you said, it's the single player game. That's the money maker. And I agree, like odds are when it does come out, if it does come out, when that game comes out, word of mouth will spread and that thing's gonna sell like hotcakes, probably.
Oh,
But-
yeah.
Oh, and I guarantee it's going to get sold to console.
I mean, maybe by the time it comes out,
maybe not right
consoles-
off the bat, but long term, it'll go to console.
Oh well, long term, yeah, because by the time if we're talking long term, you can have like the PS8 or whatever finally be able to run it. But the whole yeah, right. But the whole
Quantum
thing where it's like they're
computing
not
is coming.
talking about it, so how are you supposed to know that it exists? And then you just suddenly hear, no, we're making this other thing that's more important. Like, yeah, of course people are gonna be like, no, I want Star Citizen. That's what I'm interested in. I don't know what this other thing is. I don't care about this other thing. I care about Star Citizen. Like, so it's a perception issue in that, and I run into a lot of people for this entire week. I've been helping new players get acquainted with the game, and I make it a priority to kind of tell them, hey, before you get into this, know what you're getting into. Like, this isn't some game or whatever. This is an alpha. There's glitches, there's bugs. It's not finished, missing features and stuff because they're making them. This isn't a finished game and stuff like that. And I think it's the same thing with Squadron. Like, you gotta know CIG is making two games at the same time. Granted, they're essentially sister games, right? They use the same mechanics, same everything. But one is a single-player, story-driven game, and the other is an open-world MMORPG. They're very different types of games,
Yeah.
despite them sharing assets and gameplay. So,
Yep.
and they're both large games. It's not like we're making a Halo game where you got the campaign, then you got the multiplayer, and that's really it. Even that itself is a pretty big process, but no, we're making two full games that are larger than most AAA games have been for the last I'd say for the last 10 plus years. These are large games that they're making side by side, and they're saying they're prioritizing one, but if you don't know what that one is, yeah, you're gonna be a little peeved about it, and you're gonna be like, well, what about Star Citizen? Isn't Star Citizen the priority? Like, what? I don't care about this other game. So I think it's a perception issue. Well, I hate to say it like, well, you need to learn about this thing, but yeah, do the research. Learn that there is this other game, and got a bunch of...
Gamers don't read, man. Oh,
Don't care. Learn to read, damn it.
Read.
That's a good
no,
one.
I
Read.
agree. You're right.
It's like, yeah, it's just, you gotta learn that there is this other game with all these big name actors that you probably love 50% of. I say 50% of because I only know about like 50% of those that are in the game. There's probably a few that I don't know that are in the game. Like, we only learned Henry Cavill was part of it in 2018. So.
Yep.
And also,
so on a
I'm
totally
including all
different
the.
tangent, I have a question for you guys. Has anyone heard anything more about God, what was it? Starfield?
Oh no,
That's
I have
That's
not.
the Bethesda one, yeah?
Yeah, it's the Bethesda one.
Yeah.
The
Because I heard Star Atlas is basically dead, but
I forgot
I
that
did hear
existed.
That was like, oof.
That was the
Yeah.
one with the NFTs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to
apparently
kill
they
your
took
game
half
in 5
their-
seconds or less.
They had half their money, their investment money, I guess, was in the stock company that went under. So
Oh,
like-
FTX? No.
yeah,
Rip.
yep, exactly.
And this is why crypto and games don't mix.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm always making sure that I'm saying the right name, because I don't want to say Star Atlas when I mean Starfield, and I don't want to say Starfield when I say Star Atlas. So I don't care about Star Atlas. I always thought that was a vaporware anyways. But Starfield, I'm just curious, has anyone heard anything? Because I haven't heard anything in a while. And
No.
supposedly they were getting close, weren't they?
Well, it got pushed back to early next year. So.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah, they announced that I think in
I might have missed
whatever
that.
Gamescom or E3, whatever the hell it was this year, not E3 or something.
So they're paying. What you're saying is they're paying CIG for the Soon TM logo.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's the
I just
neck and
wanted
neck
to throw
race.
that
Who's
out
gonna
there.
win for the Soon TM?
I never think about it until I'm like talking about Star Citizen, and then of course, as soon as I'm done talking about it,
I still laugh when people compare the two, just because. Just
Yeah.
like, oh no, just because of the whole 100 star systems and over 1,000 planets thing. It's like, oh, it's like Star Citizen. It's like, no, it's gonna be more like a bigger Mass Effect, essentially, based on the way they described how the game is going to work and how you go from planet to planet. Like, it's an animation that plays out of your ship landing. Now, the
It's
curious
like,
thing is going to be like, will the ship be the ship you create? Because they're gonna have this whole like ship customization thing. But
It's like trying to compare No Man's Sky with Star Citizen. They're both
honestly,
space games.
yeah. Well, that's the
you
thing.
can both go
is-
places and land on planets, but they're vastly different games.
Yeah, and that's the thing is people pretty much, oh, they're both space games, therefore they're comparable. No, like even Star Citizen and Squadron 42 are like they're they're the same game and gameplay and mechanics and assets and everything, but they're two different types of games. One's a story-driven game, the other one's an MMO. I mean,
Well, I
The
think
only
the
thing
closest comparison will be Squadron 42 and Starfield.
yeah, that would
But
be a
even those
closer
are-
comparison, but even then, still a tough one. I'd say a
Yeah.
better comparison to Starfield in regards to space games would be Mass Effect. Just because they're both RPGs, they're both set in space, they're both going to have very similar things with, you click on the planet, then a cinematic plays, now you're on the planet, and... yeah, lesson to you, don't just compare space games because they're both space games. That's kind of where a lot of the similarities end with them.
But,
Start
but
and end
Star
with
Wars
both of
and
them.
Star Trek are the same.
It has space, it has ships. It's the same fucking thing, right?
Right.
Anywho, couldn't resist that one.
No, it's a great one. You ever see that Millennium
Well,
Falcon, but that looks like the Enterprise that someone made? I think I put it in
What?
our Discord server like a year or so ago. It was like this
You
little
cut
like
out
cutesy
for a
art
second.
thing where someone made the Millennium Falcon, but it's in like the Enterprise, the original series Enterprise aesthetic. So the cockpit's like the little nacelle.
Gotcha.
It says like NCC 1701 on the around the ship. And on
Yeah,
the
I've
bottom
never
of the
seen it,
image, it
but-
said, "Here to piss off both communities."
Well, if you take recent writing and directing, they are more similar than they are different.
It's true.
Oh man.
And unfortunately, not in the way of Star Wars is becoming more Star Trek.
Yeah.
They're both essentially just butchered Star Wars
Becoming
now.
bad.
They're just
or
becoming
worse.
both. Yeah. But that's a different topic for another day. I will say, just related to the Bethesda stuff, there were some official images released for the Fallout TV series. I have not looked at them just because I don't give a shit about it. You know, because video game adaptations have such a good track record.
Yeah.
So, especially TV series, they have even better track record. I say that, but
Not too bad.
some of the animated ones actually are good. I've yet to watch the Cyberpunk one, but I've heard some really good things.
I was just gonna
Edge
say,
Runners
I
cartoon?
think it's kind of too bad because I could see the Fallout, like the idea, really has some really good potential.
Absolutely.
But you would have to have, you would really need to have some good writing, so some really good production, you know, people with some really good ideas, and you would have to let them do their thing and not allow, you know, the studios to dictate the plot lines and
Not just
you know,
that.
well, you need this character for so that we can bring this group of people into, you know, for viewership. Like, you need to leave all that shit aside, and you could actually have probably an outstanding series, but it's not going to happen.
No, and it's not just that. You also need to have people who care about the source material. You need to. That otherwise
Yeah.
it just doesn't work. And if you want, if anyone watching, and you guys too, I know Cam's probably watched this already. I don't remember. I think it's Wayside Digital. It's called. There's a channel on YouTube, Wayside Digital. They made like a bunch of live action Fallout series, and some of them are really good. Some of them are like 20 minutes long or less, and others are like a full blown.
I'm kidding.
You know, here's a half-hour episode, and it's like a whole season. My personal favorite of them is one called Red Star, Fallout Red Star. So it's this little short of like essentially an NCR ranger looking for a missing girl. And it's really well done. Like there's one moment where you're gonna be like, "Oh man, that's just a guy in a mask," but I mean, how else are you gonna do a fucking super mutant?
You mean they didn't get a real super mutant?
Yeah, but they didn't get his face all green and gnarly, so he had to wear a mask. But yeah, it's really impressive stuff, and this was obviously just done by fans. And watch it for free. That's having have an Amazon subscription. Granted, everyone pretty much has time just for shipping it.
Is it true that since they're doing a TV show, some of the community-made stories for Fallout were taken down? Or was that for a different project? I don't
I
remember.
have no idea. It's the first I'm hearing about it.
I don't
Okay.
know.
It's probably a different project then.
Probably. I
But
know
with
that
the way
sounds like
Hollywood works,
Disney's
it does-
MO. That sounds like Disney's MO, where we're working on something, so any fan art and other fan-created content we're going to steal and delete the source material through lawsuits.
Sounds about right.
Well, I think we're pretty much done, yeah?
Yeah, unless
Yeah,
am
I
I
think so.
like blanking on anything? Because I feel like that wasn't all. I mean, aside from the IAE stuff, I guess we can talk a little bit about that. Like, how have you guys been? I know I've been to the expo every day. I have to
I
say,
have
No,
not
but
been keeping track of much.
definitely the best one in the. This was actually a good expo this year. Performance wasn't horrible.
It wasn't great.
Free fly.
It wasn't
It's as good as it's gonna get for a free fly at the moment.
pretty much.
I will say most of the issues I had were out of game. Like that anti-easy cheat issue. Never run into that before until the free fly.
Is
I
that
gotta
because of an
say-
update they did? The 3.17.2 update? Did they change some things?
Well, we're up to 3.17.4 now.
Oh, 4, right, yeah.
But yeah, I think so. But even before that, like, it wasn't until like day 3 or 4 that I was actually encountering that issue, and it was only in the mornings right before they would change over the expo hall to the next day. Except for yesterday, where it was going past that, the point where I had to verify the files, close out the launcher entirely. Then I had to go into the game files, go into the anti-easy cheat folder, and run it as admin, and then load it up as normal. And I also delete the cache. So I delete my cache. That seemed to fix. That was a big issue. I imagine just restarting your computer would fix it as well, but couldn't at the moment, or at the time. I mean, had stuff running in the background that running. Finally caught it though. Yeah, I gotta say, like, the expo, the visuals and aesthetic, like with the red and black colors and everything, this are definitely an improvement. Definitely looks great. Obviously, the expo itself with the Jax McClear videos are a step up from last year. Everything's just better.
So this didn't happen during the live event, but during the PTU, when they were doing testing, the Drake Caterpillar was sitting out there, and I was inside the Caterpillar, standing out the ramp on the front of it, and there was somebody that was cycling the doors open and closed. So I just kept standing on the outside, and they would close a little bit, and then, they would close a little bit and then get stuck and reopen. And I kept standing there, and eventually it crushed me, and I died. So first time I've ever been killed by a ramp from someone like closing it or cycling it open and closed. Yeah.
I have not encountered that in the live build, so that's good.
I just thought it was just really funny that it happened. I was asking for it because, I was standing on the ramp as it was closing.
Yeah, he was probably just trying to get you off of it.
Climb up on the edge. So
he was probably just trying to get you off, like get flung off, not crushed.
Yeah.
Be like the Caterpillar steel, and where it just flings people into action. I need to find that little video. That was hilarious. Like, it's gonna be like that. Yeah, what?
So last show, we decided Data Machine that just for the fun of it, because it's such an ugly little ship, we're gonna start a campaign for the Cutter to be best in show next year.
Well, as ugly as you might find it, I think it's a decent little ship.
Oh, on paper, it's an outstanding ship. I agree. I think it's probably the best starter ship that they have out there for the capacity and capability to do different things. I just think it's the ugliest ship I've seen in Star Citizen ever so far. Yeah, exactly. Like I keep trying to find what exactly I don't like when I look at like the close-ups of it, and it's not any one thing. It's kind of like all the pieces put together just make it look horrible to me.
That's funny. The one thing that I really like about it is that the VTOL engines seem more towards the center of mass. So.
As opposed to the Cutlass, where it would just that's not like
Yeah. The one criticism I have about it are the door panels, where you think you need to push to open or close the panel with a little screen is not the
I had that issue too.
These little tiny dots underneath.
Yeah, you keep thinking it's a screen, but it's not, because that little light up bar that actually tells you what it is.
Yeah.
But you think that's the interactable, but it's the buttons underneath. I don't like that either.
Yeah, I think it's a great ship. Like, I would recommend it to new players as like, hey, if you're gonna buy a ship, I think that's the one to start out in. But I just, oh man,
But
Couple other things.
it's okay to have some ugly ships out there.
yeah,
Not every
absolutely.
ship needs to be the most beautiful. Yeah.
I agree, absolutely. Uh, so I guess to me, that's why I think like it would make a great best in show because it's the little ugly duckling, you know.
I think I can.
Yeah, as far as the show went, I thought for the ships that they released, I thought the Pisces was probably the best one overall. Like it, and everything I'm saying here is just my own personal opinion about things in like how I want to play the game and what I'm looking for in the game. I'm not making statements to the bigger picture of
Too late.
the by the numbers this ship is better than that ship. I'm just saying I thought the Pisces was medical version was probably the best one, and then to me the Cutter was number 2, and then the Galaxy was number 3 as far as just preference of which ones I would actually spend time playing with.
Would you count the Corsair? Because personally, I don't, just because it's not a new ship at IAE. Just a ship that came out at IAE.
If I was going to count the Cutter, I would put it in
You mean the Corsair?
probably in second. So the Pisces medical, then the Cutter, then the Corsair, then the Cutter, then the Galaxy. But that's just my own rankings, and that's
No,
based off of
I agree with that order.
like
because-
for my gameplay. I'm not looking for big ships in the long term. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
have to sit there and cajole people to come and crew my ship kind of a thing. That's not the gameplay I'm looking for. If it's there, it's there. But in general, I think I'm going to be more interested in like the smaller, one to maybe 4-man ship versus some of the larger ones. So that's just my gaming preference.
Yeah, I mean
So
that's
for
why.
me personally, as far as ships go, I really don't care. I am waiting to see what kind of gameplay is going to be associated with them before I decide what ships I consider good or not, because there's so much that's going to change. I think looking at a ship right now and saying this is the ship for me, it's going to do what I want, is very short-sighted, because everything that we know about Star Citizen I think is probably going to change quite a bit.
Yeah.
True, I agree.
Thank you
And
for cutting me
I-
off and saying exactly what I was going to say.
But I also think that there are some of the smaller baseline ships that you can look at and kind of go, I think that's a pretty good bet that it's gonna allow me to do the initial things I want to do to get started out in.
Yeah. I'm
gonna
with
do
you
what I gotta
also on
do.
the larger ships. Like the smaller 1 to 2 man ships are probably more interesting to me because and until we get the ability to hire AI crew and until it becomes interesting, I don't want to have to look around for randoms or try to find a bunch of friends to do the multi-crew stuff.
Yeah.
I'll let someone else pay the big bucks and just leech off of them.
I see.
Like,
That's where I come in.
The one ship that I will say I eyeball every single year is the Endeavor, just because the price point it's at. I think it's an insanely good deal. But again, the only thing that's stopping me is I'm like, but do I want to have the responsibility for that ship in the long term? And
Yeah.
just here's actually something that I thought up while I was reviewing the ships a couple days ago. Do you think that CIG in the long term is going to introduce a penalty tax if you have a large ship that you don't use in the the first year or two that you're in the game? I'm just using year or two as a generic time frame, but my point being, could you see CIG saying, hey, if you have a ship in storage for a long period of time, you need to start paying a fee for that? Or maybe an alternate version, because some people who own those ships wouldn't like that. Maybe an alternate version is, if that ship spends too long in storage, air quotes around that word, maybe the first time you pull it back out, you're gonna have to pay like a flight ready, getting it cleaned up and getting it prepped and getting it ready to fly again, kind of a cost as a money sink, so that you don't have people buying just constantly all the big ships for long term. Could you see CIG doing that?
No, I don't think it makes any sense to the kind of game that they're
Don't
making.
think so. I mean, you're gonna have maintenance costs for all your ships anyways, from what they've said, at least so far. Granted, that's subject to change. I mean, you're gonna have some kind of maintenance costs on it, though.
But what if you're not using?
If you're not using it, then I don't see why you would, aside from where you're keeping it. Which it depends entirely on: do you have your own hangar, or are you keeping
That's
it?
That's the question I'm asking. Like, if you, let's say you own a Kraken, right? But you don't pull it out. The game launches. Let's just pick whatever your terminology is for official launch. The game launches. You start out. You don't want to pull that ship out because you can't afford to right now. You don't have you haven't set your character up. You don't have your finances going. You don't have the player base to help you run that ship. So you just don't touch it. You don't pull it out. Do you think you're going to have to pay a constant fee on that thing, even though it's just in storage and you're not touching it?
No.
No, unless it's in like a public place. Like if you're storing it at, you're at one of the rest stops or something, you're just storing it there. Yeah, you're going to be paying a fee for keeping it there.
Well, right, but that means that you pulled it out to get it to that place.
Right.
I don't think it makes any sense for CIG to create a punishment for people that have purchased their ships. That seems counterproductive.
Or just
from
punishment
a marketing
for storing
aspect,
the ship.
and it just sounds like bad game design, and I don't think they would do that.
Okay. I was kind of leaning that same way. Kind of like they can't. If you bought the ship, there should never be a way that you permanently lose that ship, kind of a thing. So I kind of agree on that, but at the same time, it kind of wouldn't surprise me if they want to create some kind of a taxation just to help the economy for people who have those huge fleets of ships.
But they don't need to do that because the AI. This isn't Eve. AI is going to be maintaining the economy.
Oh my God! I hit volume and you just came across like.
Oh, I'm so sorry, my man. So sorry. No, I was saying
It was my fault. I hit the button.
At any rate, though.
Go ahead.
The economy is going to be half driven by the AI, though. We're just the experiment factor. They're the control. So
no, the economy is going to be driven 90% by the.
Whatever. Point being is that the AI are going to be affecting the economy in a nice control, steady line, and we're going to be affecting it as the experiment to that control. So, yeah, there's not going to be a case of like we need to artificially boost the economy with tax type thing. In that regard, like the ships,
drain the players.
Oh, at that point, it's just a penalty to drain players of income, which is going to be hard to come by in the verse, anyways.
Well, my thoughts on the whole aspect is that if a ship is stored, it should not have any. So again, if you want to go and refuel it, rearm it, repair it, anything like that, yeah, you're going to be paying fees associated with it. But if the ship is just flown somewhere and, maybe when you first land, you'll have some kind of a fee you'll pay. And if you can't, you have some kind of a tab of some kind. But other than that, for the ship just sitting there and existing, while you go off and do other things, I don't think there should be some kind of like, oh, hey, you've had your Cutlass Black sitting here for 3 months. You got to pay us 300 credits or whatever for it sitting here. I don't think there should be anything like that.
Okay. And just for clarity, my assumption is that, you'll have kind of like starting home base hangar that you automatically own and you don't have to pay anyone for. So my assumption is kind of like the assumption in the argument is, your ships are all just stored in there until you make an effort to actually pull them out and go fly off to different places in the verse. But
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see or hear exactly how they plan on handling the first spawn. Like, where are your ships going to be initially before you pull them out of the ether? It'll probably be like you said, to just be at your main planet in a hangar somewhere.
Which will be tricky depending on how things are, because at the moment, if you do ArcCorp, all your ground vehicles are there too, and at least currently, you can't spawn ground vehicles there. So
yeah, but that's all going to get changed.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I want to be able to drive on ArcCorp.
Plus, like Data said, eventually we're going to have AI that you're going to be able to hire to do things like move your vehicles from point A to point B. I'm not saying it's easy, and it might cost you a little bit, but I think that eventually we're going to have it where, kind of like in Elite Dangerous, where if you have a ship component that's on another station, you can hire it to be shipped to you, kind of a thing. I think that's where you're going to see a lot of NPC action, a lot of AI action.
Yep.
Yeah, the more interesting aspect of that, I think, would be, are they going to physicalize those transfers? So you can find an NPC that's hauling ships and intercept it and steal those ships, or if it's all going to be behind the scenes, just data tracking.
I'd like to see it physicalized, because
I'd
to
hope
me that's
so, yeah.
gameplay for the pirates. But at the same time, I also want it so that technically, if it's intercepted, like if you're customer A at endpoint A, and the NPC is at point B moving to A and he gets intercepted, that's gameplay for whatever players are involved in that scenario. But you, as customer A, you still receive your thing at the time that it would have arrived correctly.
Yeah,
they could alternatively.
You put in a transfer request, and AI is spawned with that whatever you're carrying and moves from point A to point B. But regardless of what happens to that AI, your request is going to get met within the time frame that.
They can do that, or they can have the alternative being you have essentially you can track the shipment. So if it's stolen,
well, you have to think about how much that gameplay is going to affect each person. So
right.
You don't want it to be horribly penalizing for the person that's trying to transport their vehicle, because
that's what I'm saying.
That could be a significantly negative impact for them gameplay wise and time wise.
Yeah,
it's the same question we've talked about with bounty hunting and what happens to you as a player if you get captured as a bounty. I mean, are you stuck in there for the duration of the bounty hunter and you're just trapped until they decide to move you? Or once you get trapped, do you essentially just go to jail and serve your time, and then the bounty hunter may have gameplay associated with moving your body, but it doesn't relate to you as a player anymore? It's the same kind of question.
Yeah, because you don't want to stare at a blank screen because you're in cryogen storage for the next 8 hours, every time you log in. That's
not fun gameplay for you.
Maybe seeing silly shapes every now and then as your consciousness drifts in and out.
But one thing I think would be really cool is if that AI is created because you created that mission.
I was thinking that, that would be.
I would like it. Let's say there's a player pirate that's on that flight who's capable of interdicting it, and all the little things come together, all the little algorithms come together, and he actually intercepts your AI ship that had your piece on it. I think it'd be cool if that pirate sees your part. He doesn't know it's your part, but the how do I say it? The part that you told the AI to bring is actually on that AI ship. So that whoever that pirate player is, he sees that part. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like when you put in the request, an AI is generated that is essentially moving what you requested in a ship from wherever it was at to wherever you are. But what happens to that player or that AI isn't going to affect you as a player getting your delivery, but say somebody else, a pirate or anybody else could intercept it on the way and then have access to whatever that AI is carrying. And then other missions could be spawned based on what happens. If you steal it, then, another mission could be popped up in that area for someone to recover that stolen property. So then you have good guy versus bad guy generated from a player saying, hey, I want this ship moved from A to B. And that player doesn't have any interaction with what happens to it in the transit from A to B, but a whole bunch of stuff could get generated on the fly dynamically based on interactions from other players with that AI.
And that's why we don't hear from Tony right now. Because he's trying to figure all that out.
Yep,
No, I
he's got
absolutely
the enormously fun task of doing all that. I do have some news actually that right now. Apparently, if you only have the C8R, the medical Pisces, it is not going to be getting the best in shell paint. If you have the C8 and the C8X, you will be getting the best in shell paint. So.
How old is that info? Because I heard yesterday that was not true.
It just came out today at 6:20 p.m.
Okay.
As far as I'm aware.
Interesting. Because I heard yesterday they said, no. They initially came out and said you weren't getting it. And then supposedly yesterday they said, no. Everybody, if you own the ship, it doesn't matter what version, you get access to all the different paint schemes.
No, okay,
regardless.
So it doesn't matter what version of the Pisces you have. You can use all the paint schemes on the website that you can buy. It's the best in show paint that you get from IAE. The ones with the top 4 ships from Ship Showdown.
Yep.
That one you have to have the C8 or C8X to get.
Because technically the medical version wasn't
there. It was the C8X that won, or C8.
Yeah. In some ways it makes sense.
Use your index finger to push your glasses up on your nose when you said that, right?
Technically. He's technically correct. The best kind of correct. But yeah, the C8. But keep in mind, if you have both, you can put that paint on. I'm pretty sure on the. I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'll actually have to experiment with that later because I do have both. I'll have to see if it can swappable to the medical Pisces because the other skins are interchangeable. You can put the medical paints on the regular Pisces and vice versa. But I don't know about the best in show one yet because they're not in my hangar for some reason.
Yeah, to my understanding, it's that with the medical Pisces, you don't get, if you only own the medical Pisces, you are not going to get the best in show skin.
Correct.
However, the best in show skin will still apply to the medical Pisces as it would for any Pisces.
If you do
if you have the regular Pisces to then get the skin
if you one way or another end up having it.
Yeah.
I just thought it was worth mentioning because I have both Pisces and so I don't get two. Which I figured as much anyways. I wasn't surprised by this, but it is worth pointing out because as Paulside said, there was confusion around it.
Overall, I thought I went fairly well. Pretty good.
Yep.
Nothing really bad. I think the only negative aspect, and that totally is dependent on the individual opinion, was the galaxy being introduced. But other than that,
No, honestly, I'd say I disagree. The only real negative aspect is just the typical free fly performance hit that the servers take.
Yeah.
Because, the ship you can take or leave, it's not the best, but it's not in game, so it doesn't matter at the moment.
Oh, one other thing. I just curious, does anyone know what their total take has been so far? I thought I heard somebody saying a couple days ago that they've already broken they broke the records again already, and it's not even over.
Total the crowdfunding goal. Okay, I'm like, what do you mean total take? I thought you meant our take on something.
I have no idea.
I can check right now. As of right now, as of this moment, there are currently 4,249,970 citizens, people who have created an account. Or
Yeah, but how much money did they
accounts.
make?
I'm
is what
looking now. Give me a sec.
Okay, it's been a second.
Now! How about now?
It's loading. Okay.
Now?
529,315,600.
That's it?
I think the record previous was 520, but I'm not sure on that. So I think they've definitely beat it.
There it is. Gone up 100 million from last year.
That's it?
I will say, so Halo Infinite's budget was 500 million. It took Star Citizen 10 years to reach that. That's impressive in an interesting way. Shows you how much money AAA gaming companies have to throw at mostly marketing.
It also
Well, that's
puts
the
into
thing.
perspective the difference in quality gameplay that you can get from both.
True, plus also the fact that a company like Microsoft makes other things that they make money from.
Yeah.
But my point was just like the size of the company. It shows you they have $500 million that 90% of is just thrown away for commercials, essentially.
Yeah.
Whereas Star Citizen, it took them 10 years in crowdfunding to get that much money. Like that's all.
And I would argue that the majority of that money has been put into the project versus
yes,
marketing.
and that's also the point. Where it's like that's like it took them 10 years to get to this. Like essentially, it took them 10 years to get to a AAA modern day AAA game budget, and all of that, or at least I would say 90 to 80% of it is actually going into the game. Whereas it's the reverse, the AAA stuff. Last, I think we can end it with some stuff relating to Week in Star Citizen. They put that out already. Tuesday is getting a Galactopedia update. Nothing today. Wednesday is going to be the. Yep.
Real quick, sorry. How many people really pay attention to Galactopedia updates?
I
I'm
don't
just
know.
curious.
I don't that much. I use it every now and then for like search when I want to write something. Wednesday is
I
going to
don't
be an
disagree.
alpha.
It's just-
Wednesday
brings up
is going to be a big one
topic.
because we have Alpha 318 Patch Watch. And then we have Inside Star Citizen on Thursday for asset validation from Tools team and Polaris concept model internal layout rework. That should make some Polaris people happy. And then Friday is Star Citizen Live, which is the Montreal Sandbox 1 team to discuss their work on Alpha 3. But we should be getting hopefully getting a lot of information this week.
Yeah,
It makes sense that it's starting Wednesday because Wednesday is the last day of the free flight. Hopefully the servers can kind of get back to a more stable part after that. Like Wednesday, we'll all be making sighs of
collective
relief.
sigh of relief.
Yeah, collective sigh of relief. Stop clenching. We're all good. But yeah, hopefully things get improved with that. But the patch watch has me a bit excited because usually they don't do that until they're relatively close to dropping the patch live.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what do you think the odds are that they'll just skip the typical PTU cycles and just release it after Evocati?
the odds are slim, but I would not be surprised if they did do that.
I don't see them doing that.
Let me rephrase. It's like 1% or less. 0.001. But I mean, look, anything's possible, right?
That's what they want you to think.
Then they're making me think correctly. I don't know. yeah, the whole. I doubt they're gonna actually more the PT stuff. I feel like it's going to be like a 3.0 thing where it's going to be in PTU up until either up until the last minute, right into right into December 24th, or we're just gonna have it in PTU until January/February, where it'll be dropped live then.
Yeah, I think with the amount of forewarning that they gave us early on in the year about this specific patch, I think we're probably only about halfway through the wait cycle. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
It has been in Ivacati very long. That.
Personally, I'm okay with it though. Like I'd rather see a good product come out, especially with the kind of wider publicity that they've gotten in this past year or so. I'd like to see a cleaner product come out than a really, really buggy mess hit the public.
Here.
Yeah.
Especially after what happened with both 3.0 and 3.15, where it was kind of the same deal of very, very glitchy patch right before the holiday season. Or right before the holidays, I should say. And then nothing. No fixes or anything because they're all off until mid-January or late January. And then that's fine when you get a patch fix, or you're stuck for a month with essentially the broken patch.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I rather wait
good.
and be stuck with 3.17.4 up until January than get a broken 3.
Well, I mean, it never looks good when, like, a kid comes home from college and he wants to show his friends this cool game that he's just gotten into, and when he loads it up, it's a buggy mess because there's no support because everyone's gone for the holidays.
Yeah.
That just doesn't look good,
No. That's what I'm saying, especially since right now, yeah, things aren't great, and there's probably going to be a hot fix on Wednesday after the free fly. But, like, things are... That's another thing, too, is there's going to be a patch wipe with 3.18, at least this way. You still have gear, you still have your ships that you bought and everything like that, so there's still that, I guess, security blanket of things to do with shenanigans with 3.17 while there's a... where there's no support from CIG for.
I did actually forget about the character reset bit.
What was going on with the character reset bit?
Oh, I just forgot.
Oh, you just forgot
momentarily
it
that they're
existed.
gonna do the reset. Yeah.
I need to do one to fix my Pisces because I can't use the regular Pisces. Right
Well,
now.
I guess I mean resetting everybody's money.
Oh, you mean the
ships and
database
stuff
wipe.
that they bought. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the stuff
That'll be
most of us are
interesting.
going to be able to get back pretty damn quickly.
Because if the cargo stuff comes in and everyone's scrambling to make money, that means the pirates are going to really be out there.
Which
Well,
means
with all
that you have to know the missions that everyone's not doing so that you can.
Yeah.
Well, like, no one's doing trading right now. No one's doing cargo because it's not profitable enough. And when you add in there too, oh, there's pirates. Now I really do need to hire like escorts, except I'm not making enough money to hire escorts. Because like right now, if one cargo run goes badly for you, it
You're
takes
done.
like 20
Yeah.
successful cargo runs to make that money back.
Yeah.
You've
Why would
bankrupt
I ever
yourself.
do this then?
So that means it's the miners that'll be left to prey upon.
Always has been.
Yeah.
Did they say when or when they expected the soft death mechanics to come in?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to change things up a lot for people who want to target
That's what I was saying.
traders. Yeah.
you're going to have people scrambling to make money because of the wipe. And yet with a soft death, that means the pirates are going to be out there because they can actually make more money off the cargo boxes now.
Yeah. Well, they can actually make money, period, off of hijacking cargo ships versus just trying to get the people to give them money to let them go.
Yeah. But that basically what I was getting at is that the wipe is really going to drive that that environment.
Yeah, it's going to be a more
wanting to make
dangerous
money.
place out there for everybody,
Yep.
probably.
And I think I still only start, like, I don't know how I've done it, but I think I still only start with like 5,000 UE or AUIC.
Yeah, I don't think I'm much more than that.
But that's in the testing, right?
No, but he's saying that's only in PTU.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on what PTU version you're testing in, but is multiple millions, yeah. So you can buy a couple ships and test them.
Okay. So now in the regular PU, for everybody, no matter what.
Yeah, but the base amount is what he's saying. You're saying the base is going to get upped to 20? Okay.
Yeah, that's all I get. Okay. So that's been upped. But still, I mean, with the cost of everything, that's still not much. Yeah.
Well, UGF missions are probably going to be the way to go for everybody starting out because you can make, 100K pretty quick doing those. And then you can outfit your fighting ship or your mining ship. You're probably not going to do trading until you're at least a millionaire, if trading is even viable. Yeah.
Well, they did say, though, that they... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say combat missions are always going to be a viable option. The bounty hunter missions are always going to be viable for good combat pilots because you can probably get up to HRTs with nothing but an Aurora if you know what you're doing.
I believe they also did say that they were planning on splitting out a difference between running cargo and hauling. In other words, that I should say, a difference between hauling goods for other people and being a cargo trader yourself where it's all on you.
It's interesting you say that. I've often wondered why they don't have NPCs putting out contracts to transport goods where you get paid just to be the middleman, but you don't have any, you're not investing your own money on the cargo itself. You're a contractor versus an operator.
Truck driver instead of a trader.
Well, that's what, like, the box missions that we're getting right now, that's effectively what those are, but they're intending that you're going to be able to be like, hey, I've got a Caterpillar, hey, I've got a Starfarer, a Carrack, here's 300 SCU of cargo to run to this place here. It's not yours. You aren't putting the money up front for it. You're just the middleman moving that. That's literally what they're talking about, so that there is a difference between buying your own cargo and being a trader and hauling other people's stuff.
Yeah.
But there's no AI version of it. You have to rely on the player doing that. At least, not at the moment. So.
That would be good, but I can see them messing up the cost of it so that it doesn't even like make enough for you to buy your fuel.
Oh, it's entirely possible.
Depends on the ship. The fuel cost.
Yeah,
could be-
if you're using a javelin to do box missions, like
They're very
yes,
big boxes,
secure,
okay?
However,
It's like taking a caterpillar for a 1 SKU box.
Not even. Those little boxes aren't even 1 SKU.
a 1/8 SKU, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it's like using an 890 jump to do ROC mining.
Yeah. Look, if you're rich,
People don't do that?
Data and I once used the Carrick for ROC mine.
just once.
Yeah, you can do it. It's not really efficient, but I guess the upside is that you've got a med bed in case you die from exposure because you're not paying attention.
I want you to think.
Which I have done before.
No, we were smart about it though that time. We were going on moons that weren't going to kill us in 10 minutes or less.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to that 600 rework. That'll be
Oh
nice.
yeah.
That's what they want you
Having
to think.
that med bed now, that'll be good.
While we're on the topic of reworks, real quick, why is the Polaris getting an internal rework?
I don't
what's the
know.
story
That
with
is a good question. That's why when I read it, I was like confused because it's not even out yet.
I don't know for sure, but I think this is the first real iteration we're seeing where its initial concept design was not metrically correct, and they're beginning to realize that that thing's going to have to grow to actually fit the things that they said it's supposed to be able to do.
That would make sense.
So it had the
So
opposite
basically
problems
they're
that I was
just doing
expecting it to
a
have, which was empty
reconcepting of it?
space.
Yeah, like you're going to see the stats change on it. It's probably going to grow in size. So you think about it, like back when it was concepted, the hangar for it was tiny. It could barely fit what you call it.
Prospector?
I think. Sorry, what?
Prospector?
No, the main fighter.
Gladius?
Gladius?
No, that the Lightning's going to replace.
Mustang? Oh.
A Hornet?
Oh, Hornet.
The Hornet. Yeah, so it could barely fit a Hornet, but yet it was
Gladius
supposed
is
to be able
bigger
to
than a
handle.
Hornet in dimensions.
Sorry?
I mean, the Gladius is not as tall, but isn't it a little longer than a Hornet or not?
Details.
Gladius
know.
is quite a bit smaller than a Hornet, I think.
But the whole concept of the Polaris was that it's going to basically be able to hold your medium fighter as like your your support ship.
Yeah.
And I think now they're realizing that, because remember, all the ships that we know up till I would say the last ones within the last like maybe year or two, all their metrics are off. They can't fit all the pieces and parts that all the ships are going to need to have. So almost all our ships are going to grow. We don't know how much, and they'll probably try and massage it to keep them as small as they can. But your Auroras, your Mustangs, all those ships are going to have to change size a little bit. So I think what they're realizing is that like they couldn't even fit what the basic fighters, they couldn't even fit in the Polaris hangar now. And that's just that piece. Think about all the torpedoes and all the components that are supposed to fit inside the Polaris on top of that. It's, I think this is their first iteration of them realizing, okay, guys, we got to get in front of this because it's only going to get worse. The longer we ignore this, the worse it gets, kind of a thing. And so I think they're probably using that as kind of like the baseline of the larger ships. So just like let's look at how much this is actually going to take us to do, because then it'll give us a kind of a guideline for the other ships that are going to need to change as well.
I've also I've thought about like the is it the Bengal that's supposed to be a carrier?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Isn't it only like capable of carrying like 1 or 2 ships? 1 or 2 fighters?
No, you're thinking of the Idris only carries 3.
Okay.
The
Yeah,
Javelin actually carries, like, I think it can carry only a few as well. Like, it can fit
Maybe it's the
Vanguard.
Javelin I'm thinking of.
It's got
The
that
Javelin is
elevator that goes
supposed
to
to
the
be-
surface.
The Javelin is supposed to be the Squadron 42 ship, right?
I mean, technically, they're all supposed to be
one.
Squadron 42.
But
ships,
yeah,
like the
but it's going to
Vanguard.
be like one of the ships you spend a lot of time on, the Javelin.
No, the
a
Idris is the one
centerpiece.
you're on a lot, at least from the footage we've seen of Squadron 42.
Okay.
The
It just seems odd
UES
to me that
Stanton from that one vertical slice, right?
yeah, right.
was-
It
that
just
was an
seems odd
Idris.
to me that the ship that you're based on is only capable of holding like 1 or 2 fighters. It seems.
Well, it's the Idris that we know so far only has 3, I think, ship slots.
Well, I mean, to give it some context, I'm not saying this is what they are doing, but it's the probability is I think somewhat high based on like real world. Depending on the ship size, like most frigates, naval frigates, which is considered kind of like the smallest of the larger ships, I guess is the best way to put it. A better way to put it. Okay. So a frigate is basically the smallest of your like blue water going to go anywhere in the world ships. Anything
Yeah.
smaller than that is usually going to be what's called the littoral, which means, kind of like your Coast Guard cutter. It just kind of hangs out in the local area. It's not meant to, cross
It's
the
like going in deep
Atlantic on
water.
its own. Yeah. So most naval frigates can handle 1 helicopter.
Yeah.
Then most destroyers can handle 1, or if they're modified, handle 2 helicopters at one time. And then your cruisers can always handle 2 helicopters. And then above that is your helicopter carriers and your aircraft carriers, which are carrying like whole helicopter wings or aircraft. So I think, and based on what I've seen a lot of out of Chris Roberts, a lot of his games are designed around Royal Navy concepts.
Okay.
And those are very similar to what I was just talking about as far as like what ships carry what. So I think you've got kind of a mindset that your Corvette / frigates and above are going to have like that 2 to 3 to I think maximum would probably be about 4 ships that can be carried around by it and support it. And I think it's going to be like that Bengal carrier and larger, that where you're actually going to see like full wings of aircraft kind of a thing.
Yeah,
I think
gotcha.
the Kraken is the exception to that, but I also think it's not designed to necessarily be the military variant, so it kind of breaks.
Yeah.
So I think for most of us, the norm is that you'll see, up to 4 support fighters, that are hanging around with a single UAE ship. I think they'd be smart if they traveled in packs, though, just to be able to take on orgs.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it's look at the what was that, the Xeno threat? Like, look at how quickly players are able to take down the capital ships in that scenario.
I
I
mean,
mean, how
then
look
again,
at
though,
the fact like most orgs are, there's thousands and thousands of members and orgs, big names, right? So, granted,
I
not
guess
to be able
for
to have
me,
1,000
the
people.
reason I asked the question is because
Fine.
a small ship like a Gladius is not going to provide very much protection for a large ship like an Idris.
No, but they do have
Yeah,
turrets
But
and
then
stuff.
you wouldn't normally have just an Idris on its own, right? You would have the support ships to go along with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, you also have the turrets on it and everything like that. So.
Like, I would say that you would normally see an Idris probably with some hammerheads and
Yep.
also the
Yeah.
what's the other Anvil gunboat
Aegis.
one that's not out right now.
Nautilus?
It's not the Nautilus. It's the gunship. It's nothing but big heavy cannons. God. I know the lore story is that it was built before shields were actually a thing. so it's heavily armored.
Hmm.
The Hammerhead,
No,
technically.
no, it's a gunboat. I want to say they sold it like a year ago, 2 years ago. Great. Now you're gonna make me actually go to the website.
Well, yeah. You
I
said
have
Anvil.
absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
It's basically it's a slow heavy hitter that doesn't have a whole lot of technology, but it can just pound the crap out of people.
And take a beating.
Yeah.
Part of the problem, though, too, is that generally when you do see like real life carriers and escorts and all this kind of stuff, you know, they have multi-layer defenses for specific reasons here. But when you look at, so let's say, for example, that you have a Kraken, for example, what is going to go and be threatening a Kraken? You're either going to have something like a Javelin, so you're going to have a very, very, very large, very heavy hitting ship, so something essentially same class size, or you're going to have something along the lines of a Retaliator or an Eclipse, so a dedicated bomber that's just meant to fire out singular, very hard hitting projectiles. Problem is, if I have escorts, you know, so let's say if I have fighters aren't really going to do anything to a Kraken, and it has turrets. By, you know, sure, okay, you might have one or two of them there to fend off other fighters. You know, if you had like an arrow there, it could be an annoying pest, but it's not going to go and take down the ship. Problem is, though, those same fighters aren't really like, with how the Retaliator is armed up. If those turrets are at all effective with it having 6 fucking turrets, no fighter is going to be able to take that thing down.
Yeah.
Like, effectively, you don't have a effective ship that's really going to be able to take down a crude Retaliator, because anything that's anything that's fighter size is going to get wrecked by those turrets. Anything larger is going to get wrecked by the missiles. It's in and even then, it's still in a really, like, how it's designed and everything else, it's in a horrible spot. And I think part of the problem is they're building these they're painting up these little corners, not realizing that they painted themselves into them. So it's like, why would I have, like sure, people might come along for a ride on a Kraken, but why would I be a Gladius or a Drake Cutlass Black pilot on a Kraken? There's really no point except for a few niche scenarios. In any actual attack scenario where someone is actually trying to attack the ship, they're not going to have 1 or 2 fighters. So they're going to be bringing the Javelin, in which case you fucking run, pretty much, unless you have other heavy hitters. You know, you have your own Retaliator or something like that to try to attack the Javelin. Anything smaller than that gets pretty much ignored. They're painting themselves into a really awkward point here, and I don't know. And again, that's from our perspective. We have a whole lot of information we don't have. Maybe it all makes sense from their end, but just from our perspective, it's looking a bit awkward.
I got to agree with Cam to some degree. There's going to be a problem in that the way that they seem to be approaching it is they're thinking about it as in like real world navies operate, but that only works with real world navies. It doesn't work with a bunch of single players, even if you have organizations, because they're not structured on a military system with bureaucracy and politicians and rule of law
They're go
and
willy-nilly
like
shooting
laws
wherever
of
they
warfare
can.
and how you conduct things and you know, things like that. Like, all that stuff isn't there. So having the ships that they have, Cam's right, like, you're going to have certain ships that are just absolutely useless, or you're going to have such a big organization to actually field the amount of support ships to be effectively defensive from the threats that are out there, depending on how they develop the game. And it's a conundrum they're going to have to figure out. And the Perseus is the ship that I was thinking of.
Okay.
That's RSI.
Yeah, I don't know why I was thinking Aegis or Anvil, but the Perseus, yeah, it's supposed to be a gunboat.
Yep.
Yeah, there's again, we're kind of back to the whole thing, which is it's a space game, but Chris wants it to be a World War II in space game, which then introduces some problems to how you go about gameplay. And this is a part of that puzzle. Is, you know, how does an effective battle group actually work in the game?
Especially too when you have a whole lot of players, and I would say most players are not going to be operating as though they're in a military.
Yeah.
Like that's the problem. Is it's like it's being built out so that crewman number 35 has a role to play, but who the fuck wants to play crewman number 35? Most people are like, I
Exactly.
want to be the hero.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. They're going to have to figure something out. Because if they allow it, if they then say, okay, we're not gonna make it so that you have to have a player to effectively run your ship, you know, players running all the positions on your ship, that means then they're going to allow you to have AI that man those positions and are just as effective as players. Because otherwise, you know, even if you're the captain of the ship, if the ship can't fly correctly because the AI is bad, you're not going to want to fly the ship, and that's not a good experience of gameplay either. So essentially, the AI has to be as good as the player, and now they're going to allow you to have that AI manning those turrets and running your engine room. Well, then that means that you're going to be able to do that on your like MSR or your your smaller ships. And then now that introduces a problem there.
If that's the case, then I would question, why would I ever want to have players on my ship? Yep. Why wouldn't I just have AI that can do the job better and do what I tell them to do?
Exactly. That's part of that's the big problem.
If you played Siege of Orison with Kevin, you know exactly the answer to that one. Oh wait, you have, so you know the answer.
Each time you log in, you got to interview all your AI on your ship to make sure they're in like SEAL Team 6 mode and not derpy T-pose mode.
No, derpy T-pose mode has the psychological warfare tactic.
I guess some of the context of my original question got kind of skipped over, and that is, since the balancing is going to change and light fighters are not going to be the assault fighters. Like, we know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, a ship that can only hold like 2 Hornets. I mean, Hornets are considered medium fighters, okay, but their job isn't going to be assaulting. There's probably going to be more defense. The fact that they can have fighters at all just seems like you were talking about. What's the point of having 3 Hornets on an Idris when the things they're going to attack an Idris are not going to be deterred by 3 Hornets? They're not going to care about 3 Hornets.
That really comes back to, because it's like if you take out your capital ships and you just have your, like, I mean, even if you take out like sub-capitals, like pretty much anything like Carrack size or larger, you take all that stuff out, the ecosystem, at least that we've got, makes at least a certain amount of sense here. But the problem is, as you noted, like, why would I, you know, if I have 3 Gladiuses on an Idris, what's their fucking point?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like I've got point defenses on the Idris. Sure, maybe you'll argue that turrets on capital ships are going to be a lot slower than what we're seeing on smaller ships, to the point where they are not anti-fighter. They're meant to be heavier hitting something like a javelin, hitting something like I don't know, but very, very slow, ponderous ships, not nimble fighters are going to dance around them as much as possible here. Maybe, but then even then, okay, let's say, let's say you've got an Idris fighter group against another Idris fighter group. What are these fighters going to do? Okay, they're dodging the fire. Great. Now what? Its armor is thick enough that those weapons, like, you, even if you're loaded with all ballistics, you're going to run through all of your ammo before you ever ding it. What's the fucking point?
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And it's like, it doesn't make sense. And even if you say, let's say that you argue, okay, regular weapons won't really be hurting these larger ships. Missiles is where it is. Okay, let's say you have your what's the bomber? It starts with a G.
Gladius. Or Gladiator,
that was
yeah.
So let's say I've got a Gladiator bomber. It's got what, size 5s, I think.
Fours? I think it's fours.
Fours, somewhere around there. But for a fighter craft, it's got some decent stuff, at least until you go to like Retaliator size. Great, you've got some size 4s or size 5 munitions here. What the fuck are those gonna do against a fucking Idris? Diddly fucking squat. Like, okay, sure.
Yeah,
Now,
you have to take down the shields before you even consider doing like targeted damage to systems or something like that.
And I mean, even if you were to argue that the missile goes through the shields, you'd say, oh, the missile is ballistic. It goes through the shields because, sure. Even then, a size 4 or a size 5 hitting that thing, at least I would expect from comparing an Idris compared to a size 4 or a size 5 missile or torpedoes. I think the size 5s are technically torpedoes. A size 5 torpedo against a fucking Idris, I would expect that to barely dent the armor. Barely. Like, again, just the ecosystem they're building here, from my perspective here, it seems like we're missing a whole lot of pieces here that makes everything kind of make sense. Because as it is, why would I ever fucking have a Gladius on an Idris besides for pleasure cruising?
What I think is going to happen is, there was even a video I watched recently. There was a fully crewed Redeemer taking on a fully crewed Corsair.
Okay.
And what I'm afraid is going to happen is the balance is going to nerf all the weapons to the point where we're having Morrowind high-level engagements everywhere, where everything is supposed to be like an epic fight, and you're just throwing projectiles at each other, and it's basically this really long, dragged-out rate fight. And like real warfare, generally speaking, is very quick when it happens. You're not sitting next to a ship trading blows for 20 minutes. You're firing missiles and projectiles, and one side loses or wins very quickly.
Yeah, and
real
usually
warfare,
beyond visual range.
Yeah. Usually you don't see it, but the point is, the weapons are meant to be lethal. You want to take out your enemy as quickly as possible. And I'm afraid the kind of fights we're going to get in Star Citizen are these huge, dragged out, long slug battles where you have thousands of projectiles hitting each other, and it's okay for large ship engagements, but like medium ship battles.
If you're playing a real-time strategy game, that kind of stuff is fine because it's all about the fucking pretty visuals. If you're playing an FPS game, not so much.
Yep.
No, I fully agree, and that's and like I said, I'm sure internally this all makes a lot more sense to them than it does from our perspective, because they're we're seeing where they were 6 moves ago, and they're already working 12 moves ahead of that.
Yeah.
But just from what we're seeing right now, there's a lot of holes here. And I'm not seeing good ways to fill them yet.
I agree with Cam. However, I also have this other thought that I keep in the back of my mind, and it's the doubt portion, which is, this is the first MMO Chris Roberts has ever done. Up until now, everything that he's done have been those linear games, single player linear games, where, like you were saying, that up in your face, drawn out, looks cool combat worked. This is the first time he's doing an MMO. I want to believe that they are thinking about all this stuff, and you're absolutely right, Cam, that we are, we're 6 moves behind, and we're only playing 2D chess, and they're playing 3D chess, and they're 36 moves ahead. But I'm scared that he may not recognize how big of a problem that could be, and he hasn't wrapped his head around it yet. That's That's like the 1% doubt that stays in the back of my mind.
But all I can really see is where the crazy ride goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I honestly think a lot of this comes from that initial base problem, which is you want a World War II fighter in space, which works if you're just doing set designs. It doesn't work if you're trying to create a set of rules for a universe of multiplayers to exist off of, because then you start having these big gaping holes like what we're discussing right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a real challenge, I think, to balance everything and still make it interesting.
The plus side of it is at least they have that open development, we type of deal. If this was closed development, we'd be finding this out the worst way possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's you almost think that they might have to do some, because whatever answer they come up with, if you allow whatever they allow the AI to do, the players are going to be allowed to do as well. That's what's simply, there's going to have to be that parity. Otherwise, it breaks the game. And if you do that, you almost can't have a proper game unless you do not allow players to move above a certain class size of ship. Like, you almost have to limit what players can interact with to a certain level. Beyond a certain size, you just have to make those, like, those are all UE ships, and no player is ever allowed to actually utilize those in combat. Maybe you can go on board one and walk around on it and interact with the people on board, but you can't actually control it.
I mean, I would suppose, though, that because part of the problem with the whole balance is the inherent misbalance between a, air quotes, small craft, so anything that's not a capital, which, even for things like a hammerhead, I mean, I would classify things like a hammerhead, or even like a carrack as behaving, air quotes, behaving as capital ships. They are not fighters, because you generally don't have too much of that middle ground besides a few haulers here and there. And it's this disparity between I'm in a Gladius and I'm in an Idris. How do you go and have these exist in the same universe and have both have value, without one going in absolutely stomping the other? And I mean, part of it is that, and I think we have seen this to some degree, is capital ships are going to be very, very slow. You're going to have crews to man the weapons. They won't just have any kind of automation, or if they do, the automation is going to be very bad. And so if you do have a fighter, your defense is that you are not getting hit. It's not that you can take a hit, it's that you aren't getting hit in the first place. But on the other hand, okay, you're not getting hit. That just means you have continued survival. That doesn't mean you aren't actually participating in that fight. You're just avoiding dying. There needs to be a way without unbalancing.
You're also providing distraction.
Oh, sure. And maybe that is part of the value that small craft like that have, but there has to be some way for small craft, a la fighters, to meaningfully participate in a battle without going and making capital ships useless. Because it's like, for example, if a Gladius's guns are able to shoot through an Idris's armor, what's the fucking point of ever having a capital ship, right? I'm sitting here like, I've got inches and inches of armor, and yet this tiddly little fighter can go and fucking shoot through it. Why the fuck am I ever going to use this slow, ponderous beast of a ship that can't even hit this thing while they can hit me? There has to be a balance in just finding
Well,
that is.
that's where your bombers and your torpedo bombers come in. Like, think of a real world situation. I will allow you to choose any fighter aircraft that of your choice from any country in the real world right now. Go ahead and choose that. You would never take that and go up against an aircraft carrier by yourself. Like
Exactly.
it doesn't matter. Like you're just not going to do anything. But what your fighter will do is it will run interference for whatever fighters that carrier has, or if those are already down, your fighter is going to go in there and basically cause the defensive system to worry about that fighter and expend munitions trying to keep that fighter away, while you have your bombers, your torpedo attack platforms coming in. So I mean, to me, that's where that gameplay kind of comes into play. Where, yeah, if you got a Gladius and you're by yourself and you go up against a capital ship, you're an idiot. But to answer, what is the purpose of my Gladius if it can't destroy it? Can't destroy an Idris. Well, it's to basically be that threat and maybe take up that one turret's attention while those other ships are coming in. To me, that's where the gameplay would develop.
I see where you're coming from.
That's just my thinking.
Though one thing, and I don't know if this would at all be good or bad balance, but one thought would be to go and have it to where for any normal ship on a regular weapon mount point, if you could go and put missiles or torpedoes on there, because that would go, because I mean a lot of ships out there just do not have, if you take them into this capital ship ecosystem, they're useless. Like a lot of intended fighters, it's like if I take a Hornet into a capital ship battle, what's it doing? It's being a little distraction, I guess.
Yeah.
I
mean, that is kind of realistic.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I don't know.
Because again, you're going back to everyone wants to be a hero, right? So if you allow every fighter, every single seat, let's instead of saying fighter, if you allow every single seat ship to be a hero, then we're back to why the fuck do you bring an Idris out anyways?
Yeah.
So there has to be a little bit of that. I hear what you're saying. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I totally hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to, I guess my point of view is that if you're that single seat ship, you shouldn't have an expectation to be the hero. You should have the expectation that if you get together with a group of people, you might have a chance at being a hero. You might be the one guy who does slip in past all the turrets and gets the torpedo strike in that actually does something. But it shouldn't be a guaranteed thing. To me, that's what makes the game, that's what would make you want to retry, because maybe this time I'll get it. I don't know, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah, really.
I mean, the only other thing I could see in terms of capitals and fighters being in the fight is having points where if you remember way back when with the original Star Wars Battlefront and Battlefront 2.
Okay.
No, with it you would have in fights, your fighters would be going after essentially nodes on the ship and essentially targeting components that would then go and be like, oh, hey, we're targeting where the shield generators are. We're targeting the engines, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Star Citizen equivalent would essentially be we're targeting shield emitters, we're targeting communications array, we're targeting. Yeah.
Yeah,
See that working.
if they give the option for fighters to be able to target those with regular weapons, again, you need sustained fire and probably multiple fighters at once as well for that, but that's a possibility to be able to go and do damage to those and take them out potentially. That
Yeah,
would
collectively.
go in at least somewhat. Yeah, it's like you need like 3 of them because otherwise you just aren't doing enough damage or cutting through the shields enough.
Yeah, or
But that might
you need
go.
that sustained, one fighter's moving in, it's firing, it peels off, the next one's firing, it peels off.
Yeah, all
and
hit
so
in
on.
one spot
Mhm.
there.
Yeah.
Staggered
And that
fire line.
continuous fire brings down that item or doesn't allow it to refresh. Yeah, I would agree with that gameplay. It makes sense to me.
So something like that now gives, hey, I've got my Idris battle group with 3 Gladiuses on there. Well, hey, those 3 Gladiuses, if they can keep dodging fire long enough, they can put sustained fire on the enemy Kraken, for example, to go and hinder it in enough spots that, if you can go and keep hitting those shield emitters, for example, maybe at that point the shields go down and your regular lasers can, again, with heavy amounts of sustained firepower, be a threat. So it's like, let's say, for example, if that Kraken had absolutely no one manning the defenses, in enough time, those 3 Gladiuses, assuming that they kept on resupplying, would be able to go and eventually render it combat ineffective. Getting
Yeah.
essentially a soft kill on it because they're going just sustained fire on the engine, sustained fire on the shield emitter, sustained fire on every single weapon emplacement, sustained fire on the bridge, etc.
Yeah. To some degree, I would agree with that. I think it should be like if you're on the very low end of the spectrum, I think it should be just insane amount of time that you got to put in and effort.
Oh,
that
yeah.
you got to put into this. But could it be done? Sure. But in general, I'd also like to see it that how do I put this? I'd like to see those larger ships have to rely upon the supporting vessels as well. So no one,
Yes.
just because you have an Idris doesn't mean that you can just strut your stuff across the system. And if there's no other Idris in the system, you don't have to worry about anything. I'd like it where you need to worry about that layered defense, where you need, your Hammerhead and your Perseus, and there's a reason that you want that scouting ship out ahead, whether it's the not the Ghost, but the Sentinel, or it's that Terrapin or whatever it might be. Like, I think if you're at the level where you're prepared, you're capable of bringing out a capital ship, then I think that you should also have to put in the logistics and the planning and the strategy to effectively use that ship, if I'm making sense.
It shouldn't just be I pull it out, I put butts in seats, and I win.
Exactly. Yeah, that would kill the gameplay.
No, absolutely. And it's like
And
I don't know exactly how that kind of stuff will work because, again, we don't really have any capital ships and that kind of supporting gameplay. We know at least you're gonna need fuel, you're gonna need ammo. We're gonna have like oxygen will be a thing. Beyond
food.
that, I mean, for all we know, maybe capital ships would be like, oh, hey, for the engines, you don't just need hydrogen, you need these other things, and they
Yeah.
like, not only do you consume them over time, they wear out over time as well.
Yeah.
Maybe.
You need downtime.
Hopefully.
Maybe it doesn't go, maybe it doesn't completely break to the point you can't ever use it again, but it degrades to the point where, hey, number 4 engine is no longer working. It needs to be out of commission for 8 straight hours with 3 mechanics working on it to get it back into operational condition again.
Yeah, just regular maintenance. Like, if you don't have a mechanic work on this in X amount of time, you're starting to get, performance starts suffering.
Yeah. And the other aspect that I didn't bring up before that I think should also be a part of it is the logistics train. Not just that you planned it or that you can fund it, but that you actually need either AI or players to run logistics trains to your ship, wherever it is in the system, to keep it resupplied as you go along. So it's not just a, hey, I stocked up and now I go do a big giant battle and I cruise around the system and do whatever I want. No, you've got like a constant steady flow of materials that need to be brought back out to your ship to keep it resupplied. And that should also be part of your gameplay if you're playing with capital ships. That's just my take, though.
Yeah, or at least I'd be okay if it was something like, I've just topped up all the supplies, I'm fully maintenanced up, everything's great, and I'm gonna go out and do Xenothreat 3.0. But then as soon as that's over, I then need to go and do that again. Otherwise, if I want to go and be, let's say, for example, if I'm doing anything other than going from major station to major station to major station, I'm going to have to go and have that logistics chain. I'm going to have mechanics working on the ship here. I'm going to need fuel ships coming over to top off my tanks. Otherwise, I'm going to be hurting real bad.
Yeah.
I might go and run out of fuel because, whoops, I needed to make I need to make a diversion or something for some reason.
Yeah. I'm definitely, I don't mean that as in like, yeah, you pull it out and within the, an hour you need that supply chain.
No.
I don't mean that.
But you shouldn't be able to cruise around all week on that one tank of fuel.
Exactly.
Basically, we want gameplay systems for large ships to be meaningful and required without being overly limiting or debilitating to the player.
Yeah.
We want it to make sense and to be important and to play a role without being like super restrictive.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I will say, how do I put this? I think the fine line is what Data Machine was saying about it's not restrictive, and I think some players are going to think no matter what that it is restrictive, but I think there needs to be a certain boundary layer or boundary line that is very clear, that when you cross that line going up in ship size, from here on, player, are going to be these mechanics involved that you need to be absolutely aware of and understand to utilize these ships of these bigger sizes. I think that needs to be a very well understood, clearly delineated line, so that you don't have somebody who's used to, YOLO play style and then gets frustrated because they can't YOLO in their Idrits. And it's like, no, dude, there's game mechanics involved with these capital size ships where you need to be worried about X, Y, and Z that you never had to worry about before because you weren't in such a big ship.
Yep.
Oh,
absolutely. And I mean, I do suppose as you get closer to ships of that size, so for example, hey, you're in a fighter, sure, you could cruise around a system, a good amount of time on a fighter that's meant to be a long range fighter. Sure. Hey, I'm in a Mercury Star Runner. Okay, sure, you're bigger, you have a bigger fuel tank, but you're gonna go and also be using more fuel. So and it should just depend on what the role of the ship is. But I think that a small fighter-sized ship meant for a certain role or range should have a similar range as a larger ship of an equivalent, air quotes, role, so to speak. I don't know. I might have said that wrong.
I
But, like,
don't
it
see how they
sounded
could
like
have an equivalent range because they're smaller. Therefore, they're also going to have, you know, a much smaller fuel tank.
Hmm.
I could see it if you got things like fuel pods, kind of like we discussed last week.
Yeah.
I would agree with that, but I do think that, like, to give you an example, I think that a Gladius should have a very short range because it's extremely nimble and quick, and it's meant for that, like, you know, close up in your face knife fighting style, whereas the Vanguard Warden is meant to be a long range heavy fighter. So it's not as nimble, but it's got that longer range. And it's also not meant to get in a dogfight. It's meant to do strafing runs. So, you know, it's different play styles. I wouldn't want the Gladius to have the same range as the Warden, and I wouldn't want the Warden to have the same range as the Gladius. You know, like, which one do you get to choose? I think it should be based on the size of the ship and how much fuel it can carry, and what its intended mission role is determines how far it can go. Now, that added in is where we put in, you know, fuel tanks. So can you get your Gladius from point A to point B? Yeah, if you strap some tanks onto it. But then, you know, while it has those tanks strapped on, maybe it's not quite as nimble until you drop those tanks or take the tanks off. You know, like, just, it's that kind of, you can do one thing or the other, but you can't do both. But here's a stopgap that'll let you do one thing until you get rid of it, and now you can do the other thing.
Yeah,
Well, you
I
can think of it the same
that-
way as like military planes when they're being transported from A to B. You're not being transported with a full combat loadout. You're not expected to do combat. You're being transported from the maintenance bay that you were repaired at to the front line. The same way, you can have extra fuel to get from point A to B, but you're not going to be combat effective while you're making that transition.
Yeah, or you can be like, hey, we're, you know, I'm flying with my group of friends. We're, you know, 3 fighters. We got our little fuel pods on here. We're just going over to Pyro here, and then we're gonna go and, you know, we've got a Liberator there that we're gonna base out of that we're meeting up. Oh shit, partway through we've run into a enemy constellation Andromeda. Okay, we're gonna go and drop the fuel pods, and maybe we'll even be able to come back to them and hook back up to them. But for the fight here, we're just dropping them, and we're gonna go and start fucking fighting here. But until you go and drop those, it's gonna be rough.
Yep. I'm perfectly okay with that. That totally makes sense to me. That kind of checks all the blocks for, you know, both sides of the fight. That makes sense for all players.
Like, you can have these fuel pods or cargo pods or other things on there, but it's going to go and affect your ship to some degree.
Yeah, like a modern day F-16. You know, they're notorious for having a very short range because of the size of the tanks, because it's a small plane. But they do carry the fuel tanks on the outside that are droppable. And what they do is, the minute they know that they're going into combat, they drop those tanks, because if they pull more than a couple of G's with those tanks on, it'll actually
Tear
rip
wings
the
off.
wings off the plane. So it's, you know, that kind of play style totally makes sense to me in the game. Like, you know, hey, you can travel with your Gladius and your fuel pods, but the minute you're going to go into combat, you better drop those things.
Unless you're in space.
Well, and I kind of like,
you're still pulling G's in space.
Cam's idea.
That's true. That's true.
I like Cam's idea that, you know, there shouldn't be any. If you're in space, there shouldn't be a problem with, hey, now the fight's over. Let's fly back and let's do a little, quick EVA magic and put those pods back on to continue our flight, to wherever we're going. That works to me because
Assuming you're
it
side
provides
one.
them value that you want to, you might want to actually keep those things around instead of just treating them like disposable waste
And then having to buy new ones.
and clutter up the servers.
Right, like the medical gowns all over again.
Yeah. But I also think that a lot of what we're talking about is, again, we don't know what the future holds, and I think there's going to be a lot of that that NPC availability of, like, those liberators, kind of like, hey, I need to get my Gladius from here to Pyro. Let me load up, and you basically just load it onto this thing, and you go hang out in the crew lounge until you get into Pyro, and then that's when you actually fly your Gladius, around. Like, I think that'll be much easier to do once the AI is up and functioning and able to do those contracting roles that we're all looking forward to.
Yeah.
Because that'll really help out. Like, those people who are in those very role specific ships that feel like they're limited right now, I think will have more opportunities to kind of move around and go where they want to go. But anywho.
Well, Mando, we successfully changed the short podcast into a very long one today.
Hey, we actually have a
I think
viewer
this is
now
one of
too.
our records.
It took us 3.5 hours. We finally got someone to watch.
Woo-hoo! Hey, wait, no, that's me. I'm logged in. No.
Mike James was one in the chat saying, "Hey guys, just hid the bots. I didn't realize there were bots." Damn
You're
bots.
saying we had two?
Well, apparently one of them was a bot, so assuming that there was
It counts. If
only
it's
one.
logged in, it counts. Well, good chat, guys. Good show.
So, who wants to take it away so that we can all leave?
Quick question for you. Are you planning on the Tuesday move being permanent?
Need those details.
Don't know. I think we'll keep it to Monday for now.
Okay. I like that.
We can always plan that out later. It's not like we never contact each other outside of these chats, so.
What kind of craziness are you talking?
All the craziness, every kind of craziness, you name it. Yeah. Alright, so that's gonna be it. Unless anyone wants to pull another topic out of their ass for another 3 hours.
No,
I
I'm.
heard
I think
Dad
I'm
is
good.
saying something.
That's it. Data opened his mouth. Rabbit hole again.
He hasn't
I'm
discussed
sure I could-
racing.
I'm sure I could find a rabbit hole, but I think I'm ready to call this one.
I'm agreed.
We didn't discuss the live animals.
Oh. That's when I
All right,
thought
man.
I'm out. They keep pulling me back in.
Y'all have a good week.